Pirelli GT4 America has arrived in the state capital of Texas for round 5 of the 2024 season. At 20 turns and 3.5 miles, Circuit of the Americas offers nearly every challenge a circuit can present. Elevation change, bumps, and a mixture of high and low speed corners of nearly every description. Adding to the challenge this weekend, a first of its kind 3-hour race format that will see the teams, drivers, and cars pushed to the absolute limits. Hello and welcome to Austin, Texas and Circuit of the Americas. My name is Ryan Marine. Calvin Fish is alongside. We'll have Amanda Busick down in the pit lane on a very busy day here at Circuit of the Americas. Mentioning Calvin Fish, let's take a tour of this Circuit of the Americas track with Calvin and Parker Thompson.
Welcome to the Fanatec GT track preview from Circuit of the Americas. We're on board the Toyota Supra safety car. I've got Parker Thompson here to drive me around this amazing facility, Toyota driver, and they say that everything is bigger and better in Texas. I look at this hill up into turn 1. It's amazing. There's an 11-degree incline here, over 100 feet of elevation change, Parker, and the GT3 cars are going about $145 into this turn-in point. How do you approach it?
Well, not only is everything bigger in Texas, but I think there's more pavement at this racetrack than there is in some states here in the United States.
It's incredible. I think they go 4 or 5 wide here at the start.
So, we'll take off. Turn 1, so much track, but I keep it simple. Brake at the 100 board, make sure you get down to the apex. There's all this track, but sometimes you use it, you lose it.
So many of the corners here are modeled after famous corners around the world for Grand Prix circuits. This is the Center S we're coming into.
Flat out in our GT4 and GT3 cars, get prepped and start straddling the S's.
And this is like the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. Beckett's, Chapel coming through here, just keeps coming at you.
Want to do everything you can to use all the track, but not get on the steward's bad side. Got to keep those lefts and rights on the candy canes.
Track limits are always a big consideration here at Circuit of the Americas. This is a corner of the apex. You really need to eat it up a little bit to open up your hands.
Flat out jump the car over, keep the left sides on, and you're through turn 8.
Been a lot of resurfacing here since last year we competed. What's the grip level like here down into turn 11? Really important corner.
Pretty tough. You got to focus on exit. It's so easy to overshoot the braking, but get the car squared up and get it out for the longest straight into turn 12.
This is 1 kilometer long, about 0.6 of a mile. Top speed going down into the next brake zone is going to be about 162 miles an hour. And that's where things really start to slow down. Great overtaking opportunity down to the inside.
All the passes are going to happen here this weekend, Calvin. This is where everybody goes under attack. Get to the 150, get it braked in, get your downshifts done, and look for that apex. Get her out.
Got to be so patient through here. Reminds me of the Hockenheim Stadium section over in Germany. Very technical.
So many lines you can take here, Calvin. Almost like driving in the wet. But I like to get it nice, tight, narrow, and focus on getting my exits.
Really low speed here, about 40 miles an hour, apex, and then back on the power. Triple apex are coming up. This is turn 8 from Istanbul, it's modeled after.
Now, you can carry a lot of speed, but you want to make sure you get down to those apex curves as we get our money's worth out of the Pirelli tires here.
This reminds me of a corner at Le Mans after Indianapolis. Beautiful flow and rhythm into turn 19.
Float it over the apex curve. Make sure you keep those left sides on the candy canes.
Another important corner, getting a launch off here to finish a lap here at Circuit of the Americas.
Don't discount the roll speed. Got to get a good exit. And that is a lap at Circuit of the Americas.
What a lap. It is immense. It is certainly a huge challenge for the drivers and the teams this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Thanks to Parker and to Calvin for that. A great preview of what's to come and what lies in advance for these drivers and teams over the next 3 hours going into first of its kind race here, Calvin. There's been a lot of hand-wringing about how the rules are going to play out, what this race is going to look like, but I think everyone's pretty excited to give it a try.
Yeah, certainly a new format with a 3-hour Enduro. Double points are on the board here today. 2 driver lineups, maximum stint length of 50 minutes. So that's from pit out to pit in. So you're really looking at a 3-stop strategy here. 4 stints split between the 2 drivers. So one stint could be a little bit shorter. Some people may elect just to do equal stints of about 45 minutes each. So certain template. There's not too much strategy involved, but you know that some of the teams will be trying to look for that little wrinkle to get them to victory lane.
As you can see, a couple of Nissans set to start on the front row, but those cars are carrying a little bit of extra weight since qualifying. That's a story we'll talk about here in a little while. But now let's head down to the grid and Amanda.
Hey Ryan, and the engine's just fired on the GT4 machinery down here, and like you guys said, this is one of its kind, the Lonestar Enduro, and that's what it feels like down here as well, talking to the teams, talking to the drivers. There's a little bit of apprehension of what's to come. You guys were talking some strategy on the pit stops and kind of that driver, the minimum length, and what the choices are going to go with. I've heard a little bit of everything, sort of like you were saying, Cal, on like 45 minutes. Some people may elect to see that 30-minute, as you were speaking of, on maybe some of the Pro-Am lineups. But the wrinkle of this year down on pit lane is going to be these pit stops that are going to be upcoming. A lot of these teams have no real experience when it comes to changing tires and refueling. I was talking to Tony Gaples prior to this race, and he said they actually have members from DXDT helping them here today. So it'll be a very busy pit lane down here, and we'll be all eyes for it.
Thanks, Amanda, and stay cool down there. I know it's been a long day for you. Certainly will be an exciting one to be down in the pits because, to her point, Calvin, I think the way that these pit stops play out and executing those pit stops are going to be really, really important to the outcome of today's race, which, in addition to being longer, has double points on offer as it's the lone race of the weekend for the championship. Here's the starting grid. On the front row, Tony Gaples and Demir Hott, Dan Hanley and Todd Perriott in row number 2. Keep in mind, the qualifying driver did not have to start, so some teams electing to go with their more inexperienced drivers at the start, like Michael Oriema, who starts 5th in a car qualified by Mateus Leist. Eric Filgaris will start 6th. Kurt Swearingen and Gray Newell, they lined up in the 4th row of the grid today, a couple of Pro-Am class cars. Row number 5 on the grid belongs to Colin Garrett of Auto Technic Racing, and Colin Harrison will start 10th. Hannah Greenmeyer, now a Pro-Am entry. That's a change since the last race, next to Kevin Boehm, Jake Cowden, and Troy Lindstrom in row number 7 here today. Mackay Stevens and Judson Holt, a debut for that team in the championship for the season. They start in the 8th row. John Jesbray and Alex Vogel in row number 9. The 10th row belongs to Isabella Robusto. Welcome back to the championship to Isabella. Charlie Poston starts next to her. Rob Holland and James Walker Jr. back in row number 11 here today. And Levon Goulart starting in the 12th spot. Paul Sparta, make that 12th row. Paul Sparta alongside. Mike Lamara driving alongside Ryan Eversley for Precision Racing LA, starting 25th next to Nick Shanny, Tyler Sharon, and David Peterman in row 14. And Sam Owen for OGH Motorsports starts back by his lonesome in row 15. There's the skyline of the capital of the Lone Star State in the background. We're about 11 miles away from Austin, Texas, but we're about to turn these cars loose for the longest GT4 race we have seen, at least a bespoke GT4 race here in North America under SRO sanction. A lot of unknowns going into this race, Calvin, but what do you think we might be able to expect?
Well, I think certainly the teams that do have endurance experience should have the advantage in terms of making good, clean pit stops. You've got plenty of time. You've got 90 seconds on pit lane from pit in to pit out. You have to be efficient there. Got a couple of Nissans on the front row. They've certainly shown a ton of pace of late. Tony Gaples coming off a big win in class at Sebring alongside Max Drew. He's got his regular teammate Michael Cooper back. He put the car on the pole position in qualifying this morning.
The field in great alignment. Tony Gaples in the car that Michael Cooper qualified on the Rova pole position, has the field in tow out of the final corner and entering the VP acceleration zone. Then the long drag down the front straightaway into turn number 1 and up that giant hill into the heavy braking zone. Good looking field, just waiting for the green flag. There it is from the pole position. Tony Gaples accelerates away. He grabs the top spot from Demir Hott. They fan out 3 and 4 wide further back in the pack. It's going to bunch up big time. brake smoke further back in the back here into turn number 1.
Yeah, everyone try to keep it clean. There's that funneling effect as all of the lines kind of merge there at the apex. So far, it looks good and clean. That's a great start for this race.
That's what the stewards were hoping for, delaying that green flag as long as possible to get everyone pointed straight down the front straightaway. Into the S's for the first time. The serpentine-like pattern of these cars weaving their way through this high-speed section of the track.
Eric Filgaris on the move early. We expected this with some of the AM drivers starting this race. So Eric Filgaris, one of the silver driver pairings, leads the championship right now. He's got that car up to P2 immediately.
And he grabbed the lead in the silver class as well, away from Dan Handley in the 999 Toyota Supra. So Filgaris to P2 on the road, but leading in the class. Really great start from 5th on the grid.
Tony Gaples leads up front, leader in Pro-Am right now. Demir Hart in a similar Nissan that was qualified by Baptista. Dropped a couple of positions here in the early going, but that's okay. Just settle in, just keep it nice and clean. Rodrigo's going to be fast. Great to see him back in the SRO paddocks this weekend.
Really good start from Tony Gaples. He's all by his lonesome out in front, but he's about the only one that can say that. Look at this gaggle of cars making their way down the backstretch for the first time. It's nearly 3/4, make that 2/3 of a mile, that backstretch into this tight section here of the racetrack, modeled off of the Hockenheim Stadium section. Great place to go side by side. We've seen great GT4 racing through this section of the track over the years.
Yeah, it's so wide, it's so entertaining here. If you take the traditional line and turn in late, suddenly you got drivers firing down the inside, little rub there through turn 15. One of the Mercedes getting in the back of the Porsche there as they try to accelerate off the corner.
John Jesbray in the white, black, and orange Supra might have some damage. There it is. Left side panel on that car just under the door appears to be loose, flapping in the breeze. That's tough luck for that car. He and Tyler Gonzalez have had a pretty good start to this season, all things considered, and they've got a second car in the field here this weekend with Isabella Robusto. In fact, that's Isabella right behind the team car. But in the meantime, it's a drag race down the front straightaway. Eric Filgaris had his nose ahead at the line, but the power of that Nissan still awfully stout. Tony Gaples, for now, clinging to the overall lead. Filgaris just behind, trying to get the pass made.
Yeah, Gable's got a ton of confidence in this car. He said it's early days. I'm not sure I like the car, but after a victory at Sebring, I'm sure he's liking it a whole lot better right now. But they did take that 15-kilogram balance of performance hit after qualifying. They're still showing a ton of pace, so the series felt they need to do adjust them in comparison to the rest of the field here. But so far, that'll probably take effect deeper into the green flag run here. Tony Gaples still has speed in that Black Dog Speed Shop Nissan.
He leads in the Pro-Am class. Filgaris, the second car in line, leads in the silver class. Then it's this gaggle of cars. Demir Hart leading the way for Flying Lizard. Actually, he's dropped back a couple of spots here. Dan Handley now runs in the 3rd position overall. That's the white Supra. Kevin Boehm starting the car for Random Vandals Racing. He shares that car with Kenton Cook. That team told me that, quite frankly, they didn't understand that they could nominate any starting driver they wanted. They probably would have chosen Kenton for his qualifying prowess and then to start the race, but that's not how they thought the rules played out. So Kevin Boehm gets the start, and he said, look, the goal was just to keep the nose clean at the start of this race. He's done that and has continued to move forward in the process.
Yeah, I think they were going to probably always start Kevin, but I think they didn't understand they could have qualified Kenton this morning, so I think that's the only wrinkle there that they weren't savvy with, but they're certainly having a strong year. 3 podiums so far come into this championship round, 9 points off the championship lead, sitting in P2.
Gaples under pressure here from Eric Filgaris. So far, Gaples has been able to hang on at the front of this field. He swings a little bit wide into this double, make that triple apex right-hander. Filgaris looking to fill the slot up the inside, but the gap disappears, and he has to settle back in.
Handley's done a really nice job there, sitting in P3. Toyota Supras have been fast all season long. Here comes Kevin Boehm. Is that down to the inside?
He was looking.
Yeah.
Filgaris again to the inside of Gaples. He did this on the last lap and actually had the nose ahead at the line. This time Gaples is credited with the lap lead as they came around turn 20.
Let's not forget that tremendous battle that we see now. Filgaris going for the lead, deep on the brakes up into turn 1. Tony Gaples will not give it up. Let's call it Black Dog and determination at the front of this field.
I love it. Tony Gaples doing a wonderful job at the front of this field, keeping Eric Filgaris, the reigning Fanatec GT World Challenge America champion at bay as he makes the step back down to the GT4 ranks, where he's a previous champion as well, of course. And Dan Hanley has been brought into the mix. That's that number 999 Toyota Supra. He's on the charge, as is Kevin Boehm, who gets to the outside of Hanley. They go side by side through this tight section of the racetrack. This could get awfully tight here. They're still side by side, making the run down the hill. Whoa, that was close.
See Kevin Boehm there. Watch Colin Garrett. He could slide into that same slot there on the inside of Daniel Hanley, but likes to be a little bit more patient. It's a long race here today. You're more in sprint mode in the 1 hour races that we typically have. You've got to have a little bit different mindset here.
Kevin told me earlier in the weekend he's looking for a bit of redemption here. He had a spin in one of the races last year that he put all on himself. In the meantime here, let's look at Colin Garrett making it 3 wide in the run down to the hairpin.
Oh, it's going to be tight there. Hanley fortunately didn't try and get to apex. He runs it through wide there. I'm not sure he had a spotter on the radio just telling him Garrett was down to the inside. So the two BMWs working on the Supra, trying to find a way by. Meanwhile, Phil Garrett is putting the pressure on big time. Looks to the inside, down into turn 15, side by side with Gaples. Can't quite pull it off.
Gaples hangs on. That's first and second on the road. Then you get back to the battle between 3 cars, all in the silver class. Colin Garrett, Kevin Boehm, Dan Hanley, in no particular order because they've been changing those positions multiple times. It's Hanley who leads the trio for the moment. Boehm settles in behind with Colin Garrett giving chase. Here comes Phil Garrett again, looking to the inside. Gaples gives him room. It was a little bit dangerous there for a moment. It looked like there was a miscommunication between the two, but they still end up side by side. And the Nissan in this drag race situation has been pretty strong this season. That said, Phil Garrett is able to stay alongside, and it looks like he will dispatch of Tony Gaples this time. Phil Garrett goes to the overall lead, but it took him about 3 laps to get it done.
It looks like Boehm has gotten around Hanley finally. Hanley just tucks back in between the two BMWs.
Garrett now will be the next one to take a shot at the Supra of Hanley. And don't sleep on Jake Cowden, who is slowly closing in. That's the JMF Motorsports entry, the Mercedes-AMG GT4. Young Canadian driver, runs 6th overall, 5th in class. And it looks like he's got some pace to run down this quartet.
Yeah, qualified down in the 13th spot overall, but a lot of this shuffling is going on because some teams qualified their pros, started their AMs, so we're going to see a lot of chopping around here with these early positions in the race.
Phil Garrett, by the way, owns the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race early in the going, but only by a fraction of a second. That said, he's been in traffic all race until now, so I suspect maybe this is when we see the true pace potential of that Porsche Cayman.
Yeah, he showed great discipline there. I mean, Tony Gaples, he's a great racer. He's not always been historically the best qualifier, even though he's gotten a lot better at that, but you know he gets his elbows out. He's not intimidated. He's got a really strong personality, and I think that showcases itself when he's behind the wheel. And he's got a ton of confidence right now, coming off, as we said, that win at Sebring in class.
Fantastic start to the season for the RS1 team. John Capestro Dubets drafted in very much last minute to be the co-driver for Phil Garrett this season. That is a pairing we expect to challenge at the front week in and week out, but you could say the same for Kevin Boehm and Kitten Cook. You could say the same for Dan Hanley and Parker Thompson. You could say the same for Zach Anderson and Colin Garrett. Timmy Chalkus, Jake Cowden, the whole bunch. It's a great silver class as Boehm slices to the inside, and at least for now gets around Tony Gaples, but Gaples counters right back. He's back to the inside of Kevin Boehm down the front straightaway.
Big lap by Boehm. He cleared Hanley on the exit of turn 1, and now he's going side by side with Gaples up into that brake zone, takes it in a little bit deeper. Kevin just had such great racecraft, super savvy driver, very smart engineer mind, but also clinical behind the wheel.
His second season of GT4 racing, but he's had so much success in touring cars, winning TCA and TC championships in this paddock, and then multi-time national champion at the SCCA runoffs as well, bringing all that to bear here in his second season of GT4. Tamir Hott, who started that number 5 Flying Lizard car on the front row today,
Oh, that was
contact.
close. Little rub there. Rob Holland nearly turns it sideways. Nice car control there.
Holland is the leader in the AM class, let's not forget, running 10th overall right now.
And some shuffling with some of the drivers being regraded since the last rounds of the championships. We actually lost a couple of the leading competitors in the AM class division moving forward into this season.
That's right, Austin and Roland Kreins, they were promoted to Pro-Am, but they're not here this weekend. And then the Heart of Racing team as well, they have been promoted to Pro-Am now with both of their cars. Race Vision powered by AWS, most places gained. How about Rob Holland? Up 11 spots overall, plus of course the leading class. Bohm up 10, Cowden up 7, Lamara and Robusto also up 6 spots apiece. Ooh, someone went wide there. One of the Auto Technic cars looks like it might be a little bit off the pace.
This racetrack is so wide, just multiple lines that you can run, and then if you run the big wide entry, you open up the door on the inside, then there's the crossovers that can be side-by-side action for 3 or 4 corners in a row if you play nice together. It's a fun racetrack.
Isabella Robusto having a great drive. That's an AM class entry from Smooge Racing. The second entry from Smooge is involved in this battle we were looking at there for a moment with Jesbray and Postins going side by side. But let's go to the front of the field, give you an idea of how everyone runs. It's Filgaris leading Bohm, then it's Gaples in the 3rd spot. The battle you see starting to erupt here, that is Garrett moving to the inside of Handley. Colin Garrett, though, got in pretty deep. Not exactly sure how that sorted itself out. Then we had Cowden. Swearingen comes through. That's 2nd in the Pro-Am class. Perriott hot. Holland the leader in AM, and then it becomes a pretty big pack here and hard to decipher exactly who is who and where they're running, especially in their respective classes.
New fast lap of the race for Kevin Bohm. As soon as he got clean air on the front end of that BMW, went to work at 2:16.9, about 4/10 quicker than our overall and silver class leader. So Bohm was trying to chase down the class leader that he's in. Sits about a second back and closing in, it looks like.
Certainly is. CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race to the CrowdStrike sponsored Random Vandals Racing BMW. This is a team with big plans. We'll see them GT3 racing a little bit later in the season, and one of their drivers will be Connor Daly, who is qualified for the Indianapolis 500 earlier today.
Another Connor in for the 8-hour, right? BMW factory pilot, Connor DiFilippi. So that'll be fun to see him back. He's had a lot of success there at the Indy 8-hour in seasons past.
Inaugural pole sitter, in fact. Kenton Cook will be the other driver as part of that trio, and it'll be Kenton and Connor Daly for the shorter races they intend to enter a little bit later on in the day. I know team principal Paul Sparta, he and Connor Daly are good friends. He's been keeping tabs on Connor's progress at the Speedway over the last few days, but right now his focus, of course, is on his own race. They've had a really good season in the AM class. Paul Sparta driving with Chris Wilson, and Sparta, by the way, he's made up 6 spots himself. He's down at 18th overall, but top 5 in the AM class, which is still pretty darn competitive, even with a number of the lineups getting promoted in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they have the championship lead right now, 14-point lead early, which is big, with a win and 3 runner-up finishes, so a really solid start to their 2024 season.
This is Cowden working to make up a spot on Hanley. I told you Cowden was closing in. John Farrow, who runs this team, and now it's totally run in-house, by the way. It had been partially run by Conquest Racing, Eric Bachelard's operation, but that's not the case here this year. And John Farrow has taken it upon himself to identify promising young talent, give them a spotlight, give them a platform to show their skills, and the latest crop has not disappointed with Cowden and Dimichaukis as well, doing a really nice job this year.
Settling in now, I think we've seen most of the shuffle happen between the lower graded drivers starting this race compared to their qualifying performance by their pro partners. And now it's all about just looking at the clock. I estimate the earliest you could stop and do 3 50-minute stints from that point forward would be with 2 hours, 34 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock. But then that would really tie you into a very strict regimen as when you make your next pit stops for the rest of the race.
That would be just about 10 minutes from now if anyone elected to go that route, and I suspect those that might consider it would be the teams that started their less experienced drivers in Pro-Am lineups and things of that nature. But we shall see. Battle for the lead. Filgaris has it. Bohm has tracked him down. Gaples, though, solid run. Third place in that Nissan.
Yeah, he just looks like he's got a ton of confidence with that race car. Really solid start, held the lead, was not intimidated. Lost a couple of spots, but he just sailed in nicely. He's got the Pro-Am lead, and the next Pro-Am runner is Kurt Swearingen down in 7th place overall, several seconds behind Tony.
Now we're talking strategy. Let's bring in the third member of the team, Amanda Busick. What are you hearing from a strategic perspective?
Yeah, guys, I've been sitting with Random Vandals kind of talking to both teams. You have the one duo of Paul Sparta and Chris Wilson racing in that AM category, and then you have Quentin Cook and Kevin Boehm racing in silver. And they said their strategies actually would be more similar than you would think. What they've been really focused on are these pit stops and the exact distance that they want to stay out. From what I am hearing is that if, let's say, you choose to go the full 50 minutes, the refuel actually could go over the minimum delta of what is required on pit stops. So we might see longer pit stops if someone chooses to do that 50 minutes. So it's just weighing of what the timing will be here on pit stops versus how long people are going to stay out on track.
Yeah, that's a good point. If the refueling time, we asked teams yesterday, and they still hadn't done their what they call a fuel drop last evening. They were going to work on that and get some numbers. We've been busy today, so I haven't had a chance to check back in with some of these GT4 teams. But certainly, if you got to put 50 minutes of fuel, a 50-minute stint load in, and if it's outside and get you outside of that minimum stop time of 90 seconds, that would be a consideration. I mean, these cars typically go an hour, of course, so there's plenty of fuel on board to go the distance, but that's all about how quickly you get that fuel inside the race car.
Something to monitor, though, that's for sure. Good report. Thank you, Amanda. Gaples starting to fall into the clutches we saw a moment ago of Colin Garrett, but Gaples still solidly out in front in the Pro-Am class. Look at this battle pack. Where do you look here? I mean, we've got fights everywhere. Both Heart of Racing cars are in the mix. We've got Tech Sport coming up the inside. That's Mackay Stevens looking to the inside of Isabella Robusto. And Mackay, it appears he's set to make that spot. That is a silver class entry that's mired down the order. A bit surprising. But that part of that was the qualifying strategy that Tech Sport employed, I suspect.
Bit of debris was flying there. I'm not sure if it came off the car or a car ran over something that had been dropped earlier in this race.
I think one of the Auto Technic cars further back just picked it up, I'm afraid. And hopefully that did not damage the splitter or anything else like that. It's the red hooded BMW that's coming into the shot. Let's see. Well, didn't get a look at it, but I don't believe it damaged the front of that car in a substantial way. Here's the AM class battle. First, second, and third, and they have found each other at this stage. Rob Holland, Charlie Poston, Isabella Robusto, not too far away from one another.
James Clay, Charlie Poston's going for 3 consecutive championships. Oh, that was really wide there from one of the Smooth Racing Supras there coming through turn 18. Tough start to their year, though, getting back to Clay and Postons, but they just love the battle. And I spoke to Charlie the other day about the fact that he's lost some of his AMP competitors with this regrading of some of the drivers after a couple of events this year. And he said, I'm disappointed. I wanted more of a challenge this year. He said, it's still not going to be easy, but a little bit disappointed that we lost some of the fast cars and some fast pairings in our class for the remainder of the season.
Stevens working on Robusto, but not finding it easy going. Isabella comes from a short track background. She's in the Toyota Racing driver development stable. Does a lot of stock car racing, ARCA, things of that nature. And was set to run a full season of Pirelli GT4 America last year, but got injured in a stock car race, a late model race. And that cost her the bulk of the season last year, which is a shame. This is a young lady that Toyota is really, really excited about on the stock car side, and with NASCAR going increasingly to road courses on their schedule, this is really important track time for her to hone an important part of the stock car racing craft these days.
Absolutely, and just like NASCAR on the road courses, these drivers aren't afraid to get their elbows out as well, so you can learn the rough and tumble nature of it as well. But nice to see that the series has really done a great job with the stewards and everything, talking to the drivers and just trying to ensure that they just keep it that 1-2 degrees cleaner, and just seeing some great green flag running so far this season.
Back to the front of the field. This battle is occurring 3.5 seconds ahead of third place Colin Garrett. The top three are all now silver class cars. Then you get to Tony Gaples, the leader in Pro-Am, and then two more in the silver class with Hanley and Cowden, who run within a second of one another. But boom, let me tell you, he's looking really, really confident and comfortable right now behind the wheel of that BMW. And one thing that I've talked to some drivers about this week in the GT4 paddock is the heat, and which car does best in the heat. And evidently this new BMW M4, not only does it not lose performance in the heat, it's got pretty good air conditioning, which they tell me does not sap the power very much.
Yeah, and that's a huge benefit in these conditions, of course. Driver comfort. There's going to be some long stints here this evening. And I spoke to Eric Filgaris, and conversely, he says that the Porsche kind of struggles a little bit in the heat in times of taking some of the timing away with the engine and some of the performance when you get in those extreme temperatures. But boom, big run there, almost gets into the tail of Filgaris as they try and just blend here, going through these high-speed S's. Big commitment there by Kevin Boehm. Filgaris sees him, opens up his hands a little bit, give him some room. Now they're going to be side by side here, turn 10 coming up. And a big duel down into the brake zone.
Boehm to the outside in the BMW, swings back to the inside, but Filgaris proactively, let's note, covers that off. They are side by side, and they're being chased down by the fastest car on the track, Colin Garrett, the last time by with the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race. He was a second or thereabouts quicker than these top two, who are battling amongst themselves, squabbling over first place. To the inside, here comes Kevin Boehm. To the outside, the RS1 Porsche of Eric Filgaris, with Colin Garrett waiting in the wings to pick up the pieces should it all go amiss. It does not. Boehm goes through. He takes the lead with 2 hours, 37 minutes still to go in the Lonestar Enduro.
Yeah, really timed that nicely through turn 11 at side by side into the brake zone. He let Eric have that inside lane. It compromised his exit speed a little bit. Kevin did the crossover, timed it perfectly, so he was back on the power where he needed to be. Then side by side and add that track position inside line into the brake zone for turn 12.
Filgaris' troubles are not done yet because this car is flying. We were talking about Robusto coming from the short tracks. Well, Colin Garrett's the same. He's a former track champion at South Boston Speedway in Virginia, not too far away from VIR, coincidentally. The next step on the schedule for Pirelli GT4 America. And he is closing in rapidly on the RS1 Porsche of Eric Filgaris. New fastest lap. Again, Colin Garrett goes faster still.
Yeah, purple in Sector 1 and Sector 2, so BMWs look awfully strong here in the heat of the day. This is right now the highest ambient temperature that we've seen all day long. We'll start to cool off a little bit as we get into the second and third hour, but not by a lot, only about 3 or 4 degree drop. Their forecast between race start and race finish here this evening.
Colin Garrett, I believe, attempted the NASCAR truck race here at Circuit of the Americas last year. Had a mechanical issue in qualifying and did not make the show, but he's one that some of the Truck and Xfinity Series teams will turn to when they need to qualify a car on a road course, despite the fact his background is primarily ovals. But Colin loves road racing and went road racing first via touring cars in TC America. Made the step up last year to the GT4 ranks and is looking just that much more comfortable here in his second year.
It's a battle for fourth in silver class, 5th, 6th overall. Daniel Hanley leading Jake Cowden. He's going to intensify once again, but now we get focused back on Colin Garrett. Big run down the back stretch, kilometer in length, about 0.6 of a mile, between 11 and 12. Garrett's just showing super patience here, just letting the minutes dwindle down. Getting close to when the first pit stop could be made and still suffice all of the minimum or maximum stint times here today.
I gotta mix my stories up, I'm sorry. He actually did start here at Circuit of the Americas. It might have been Yeah, it was at Indy in an Xfinity car that he failed to qualify due to a mechanical issue. So some high-level experience, of course, at Circuit of the Americas for Colin Garrett. And he has flinging that car around. Phil Garris isn't going quietly into the night either. These three have compressed a little bit. Still very early in the going as we approach that theoretical pit window. Again, there's not an official pit window in the rules, but there is a de facto one based on the stint length rules in place.
Yeah, just if you time it from the finish back right now, you can do 3 50-minute stints, plus you're on pit lane 3 times for 90 seconds. That means you can stop right now and be okay with that.
We'll see if anybody chooses to do so. Look at all the curb you can use around this place, but you got to be careful because at the apex there are some pretty substantial curbs in place to dissuade you from using them too much.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of GT3 cars suffer damage with diffusers, which sit a lot lower than the tail end of these GT4 machines. That's why you can really clamber all over these curbs here in a GT4 car without really being so vulnerable to that happening here. But again, that pit window opening would really only be for maybe a Pro-Am combination where you'd want to get your AM out and then maximize at least 2 50-minute stints for your Pro. Some people may play it a little bit more conservative. You're really locking yourself in at that point. If there's a yellow, that can throw the cat amongst the pigeons in terms of strategy. If there's a yellow, right as you need to hit pit lane, they'll give you a little fudge factor there in terms of waiting until pit lane is open and not be running afoul of that 50-minute maximum stint length. But lots of things to consider for the strategists here on the race teams this weekend.
Boom, Phil Garris, Garrett, the top three, and they're all running within about 1 second of one another. 2 hours, 32 minutes to go here in this 3-hour endurance test. Let's go back to the pits and check in with Amanda.
Yeah, Ryan, just to add on that conversation to what you and Calvin were talking about, some more of the strategy. I am talking to some of those Pro-Am lineups and hearing that if they're going to play around with some of that time, it could be on the second stint for that AM driver in this pairing, that it might just be too risky on this first stint because then you are locked into it. In terms of this stint currently, if we see a yellow flag in this session, hearing teams would consider popping into pit lane around lap 30 or around minute 36, 37 of this first 50 minutes.
All right, thank you for that. Colin Garrett in the slipstream. Phil Garris goes on the defensive, and he needs to be careful because he was warned for moving in response. I imagine that was in the battle with Kevin Boehm a couple of laps ago. So that will be lodged in the back of Eric's mind here as he fends off this challenge from Colin Garrett. He's just under assault from BMWs right now.
Yeah, they seem pretty evenly matched, right? There's not much to choose between them, but certainly Garrett's had a fast lap, about half a second quicker than Phil Garris. This RS1 Porsche rolled off the truck really quick. Led one of the early practice sessions here this weekend, coming off a sweep of the weekend at Sebring.
Here's Postins charging up through the field, and he has caught the leader in his class. That's Rob Holland, who's 10th overall. Finds himself behind Mackay Stevens, who's done a nice job to drag that Nissan back up from a lowly starting position. Garrett to the inside of Phil Garris. This is for second, and boy, that looked easy.
It did. I think Eric realizes that he's so vulnerable. You're just going to start to re-up your own tires if you start to compromise and get defensive. So I think he's just going to let these two BMWs sit up front, get in the draft, and just sit there and play the long game.
Holland in the blue Porsche. Then you get to second in class, Charlie Postins in the BMW, and behind, Hannah Greenmeyer is doing a really nice job coming up through the field. This is now a Pro-Am class car. This would have been a battle for class position just 2 weeks ago at Sebring, but that Heart of Racing Aston's been promoted to Pro-Am. That's due to the performance, of course, that we've seen from them over the start of the season. The downside to that, of course, is that the accrued points basically go out the window. It's a tough break, but you have to remember that they were racing with a derogated FIA grading that the series gives and therefore can also take away based on performance. The derogation is basically anticipating performance levels being at the bronze level, and if it's not, well, this is the risk that you run when you ask for that derogation.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big roll of the dice if you know you've got really talented drivers and they do get that derogation, and if they show pace and get results, and they had a win already. So that was bound to happen, but it really just shudders your whole season because you lose all of your points in the class that you've run. You can't be kind of interjected inside another class because someone would say, well, yeah, they beat us on the road, but we would have raced harder if they were out there in the same class, so that can't happen. So you're basically starting from scratch in the new class that you've been entered in.
Just on the outside of the top 10 overall, Hannah Greenmeyer, 11th place. Briefly had 10th, but fell back behind the BMW of the two-time and defending M-Class champions. Back to Tony Gaples, who's showing the way in Pro-Am. Now we peek in on this battle again with Holland and Postins. This is for the lead in Am, by the way. Porsche and BMW, with the interloper being the Aston Martin. And it's running at the tail of this small little train.
Greenmeyer's done a really nice job. She was sitting behind her fellow teammate, Ray Newell, there for a while, and she's kind of gotten around him. They run in the same class. I mean, I think Harder Racing didn't want two cars competing in the same class. Now they've ended up with that. So she got around a teammate. That's a bold move down to the inside, just flicks it out there, but she has nowhere near the experience of her teammate Hannah Grisham. So she's done a really solid job here in the first few races of this season, showing a lot of talent.
Picked up one of those valuable racing scholarships last year, the Pirelli Motorsports Holding Diversity Scholarship winner. Got the invitation, actually, to do the preseason test back in 22 for the W Series, as they look to find talent to fill out their field before that series disappeared. Took part in the MX5 Cup shootout, raced in USF 4 last year, finished 17th in points, but makes the switch over to sports car racing. Okay, what do you think? Is this on schedule, Calvin, for Tech Sport?
Well, it could be, but looking at the language on this pit stop, it seems pretty leisurely, doesn't it? So I wonder if there's something more technically amiss with the car versus strategy by being on pit lane right now. But yes, you could stop right now and still be good to go on 3 stops, 4 stints to get through this 3-hour race.
We will dispatch Amanda Busick to ascertain whether or not this is on schedule or if there is something amiss. In the meantime, Colin Garrett just reset the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race. He's now within 0.6 of a second of race leader Kevin Boehm. And to my eye, at least, Garrett is the only driver that has been able to crack under the 2:17 threshold anytime recently. Boehm is the only one that has done it, period, other than Colin Garrett. And Garrett's best lap is some 3 or 4 tenths quicker than Boehm's best lap to this point. There was a lot of pace in that number 51. Oh, he looks to the inside there. That would have been awfully risky, and wisely, recognizing discretion is the better part of valor, Colin Garrett backed out.
Yeah, that's a sprint race move. 3-hour enduro, you don't need to be taking that high risk, certainly on a fellow BMW this early in the game. But as you said, ton of pace. Run that fast lap much deeper into the stint. Kevin Boehm's fast lap was on lap 5. Colin Garrett just did his on lap 14, which is the previous lap to this one. But now he's in the draft, trying to make a run down here into the brake zone for turn 12.
Garrett in the slipstream. Boehm guards the inside. Here they go, side by side, wheel to wheel. I think this is where Boehm had his spin last year, if memory serves, and I know that stuck with him. They stay side by side, and the track comes back to favor Garrett, but Boehm with a little short track nudge of the former short track ace. It's not enough to rattle Colin Garrett. He is through, and he's taking the lead.
Yeah, we certainly saw these two cars, different drivers, I believe it was, at Sebring, put together a brilliant piece of racecraft going side by side for many corners. I think that was Zach Anderson on board the Auto Technic machine alongside Kevin Boehm there at Sebring from like turns 13 all the way to 16. It was really a fun part of the race to watch and just see the respect between those two drivers. But both these prep shops very evenly matched here and putting out great race cars and very equally matched BMWs.
35 minutes gone or thereabouts as they come around to complete yet another lap. Colin Garrett at the front for the first time. He shows the way ahead of Kevin Boehm. Early late race leader Eric Filgaris runs in third. Here's the NOLA Sport team going ahead and making what we can confirm as the first scheduled stop.
See, they don't have center lock wheels like our GT3 machinery does, so 5 lug nuts, basically they're scattered around the floor. The problem with that is if a car wheel spins out of pit lane, suddenly they're like little missiles coming at you if you're standing to the rear of the race car. So you basically just fire the old nuts off the wheel, and the other ones are what we call gorilla glued on, so you just throw the wheel at it and just go around and hammer those on, and just leaves a lot of wheel nuts laying all over pit lane.
That NOLA Sport team going around picking up those lug nuts now.
I tell you, I've been on pit lane when some of those have started spitting at you, and they come at you at a high rate of knots, I tell you.
Yeah, so keep your head on a swivel down there, Amanda. Although she would know that, of course, working NASCAR truck and ARCA races. That would be nothing new for our Amanda Busick. This is a fun battle here with Lindstrom leading the way out of this trio. Is that third car in line might be losing the pace a little? Is that Shanny dropping back? It's Elevon Goulard who's come through. Welcome back to the championship to Elevon in the 72 from Crooksby. Not sure if there was something amiss with the BMW running behind, but let's get an update here from Amanda down in the pits.
Guys, a little bit of an added drama here for Tech Sport. You'll see the other Nissan in. Eric Powell didn't even have his helmet on when Colin made it in. He's going over the wall. The crews got into it really fast. I'm also standing by with Jonathan Newdorf as they overlook what's happening with Mackay Steven. He is still inside the car as well. Jonathan, what have you been told?
All I've heard so far is the steering is locking up mid-corner and the engine's overheating, so we're not exactly sure what's going on. But apparently the car is very unsafe right now, so I'm not sure what Mackay said. I haven't spoken to him yet, but something with the issue with the steering and temperature.
Thank you, Jonathan. I just saw Colin Harrison as well. He just looked at me and shook his head and took his gloves off, so we'll find out what's happening there as well.
Yeah, I think they're all temperature related. You're running in such extreme conditions, and certainly some of these race cars may have not been tested in anything as extreme as we're seeing here in mid-90 ambient temps.
This is for position as Cowden has caught Hanley. They are fighting for 4th and 5th. A moment ago, we saw the Rentec team doing its pit work. Oh, big move there from Cowden. Swings to the inside and looks surprisingly easy.
It did. Sure if Hanley just didn't have the acceleration off the previous corner, but he just swooped by, made that look ridiculously easy. Tony Gable still sitting there, 6 overall with the Pro-Am lead. Sits about 10 seconds over Kurt Swearingen, who sits in second. Demir Hoff, Flying Lizard, sits in third.
This is what I was going to mention. The Rentec team here, Michael Oriema started the car. Mateus Lace, former IndyCar driver, got in, and they are having trouble getting this right front mounted. Is it stripped?
Shared, yeah, he's shared one of the
sure
pins
enough.
there.
Totally off.
Supposed to be 5 of those. I think 2 are missing.
Ooh. That's a disappointment. I talked to Michael yesterday, and they were really, really excited for this race.
Not sure what they're doing here. They're just doing this to get it back to the transporter.
Maybe.
Certainly can't send it with just 3 lugs.
Colin Harrison reporting similar issues on the second Tech Sport car, overheating, steering, locking up, and that's what Mackay Stevens was reporting on the other car. And keep in mind, Tony Gaples, who leads the Pro-Am class, that's the exact same car, that Nissan, for Black Dog Speed Shop, and also Demir Hott, who's 3rd in that class. That's the 4th Nissan in the field. So they'll want to be monitoring that situation in the Tech Sport pit.
Well, sometimes with a power steering system, you have what's called cavitation when you got fast change of direction, like down through the S's where it kind of momentarily locks and you're fighting it. But it seems like that may just be like basically shutting it down. I'm not sure if I assume it's hydraulic and not electronic.
2 hours, 20 minutes to go. The 50-minute stint length then is starting to loom. So we're just over 10 minutes away from all of these cars by regulation needing to make a stop. The cars that have made the stop so far, they're playing their strategy a little bit. what strategy is available to them at least. That Nick Shanny car, that's the one we saw dropping back earlier. Good to see after the pit stop, at least they've released the car and they send them back out. Todd Perriott, I thought, had a pretty good opening stint, and he must have turned that over to Tom Dyer. One other thing to note in the regulations, you are not allowed to double stint, no consecutive stints for the drivers. So anytime you see a pit stop, almost certainly you're going to see a driver change. We can get into the nuance of that as needed, but that's effectively what we expect to see for just about all the stops. And yeah, that is, look at dejection there on Eric Powell's face.
Yeah, so disappointing. Such a talented young driver to be given this opportunity in a really fast race car, but just had a few little technical gremlins have been biting them so far this year. But just thinking about, if you got a silver lineup and you wanted the strongest car at the end of the race, if you have a shorter stint, like if you do your final pit stop a little bit later, that would give you the freshest set of tires to get to the finish. So if you're not compromised any in terms of your driver makeup with having, you know, one driver who's rapid and another one who's not quite so quick, that could be a way to go and just doing these 50-minute stints at the beginning. Then that last pit stop, you'd have the freshest tires there as you get towards the checkered flag if it does become a shootout.
These two would fall into that category where Colin Garrett, who will turn it over to Zach Anderson, pretty close in pace. Same for Kevin Bowman, Kenton Cook. Kenton will be hopping aboard this Randa Vandals car that Kevin Bowman started. And I'll tell you what, Kevin might have lost the lead, but he is hanging tough with Colin Garrett and putting some pressure on here late in this stint.
I think for Kevin, making the move to GT4 machinery, it's more intense than what he's run before. He's just been such a great racer, winning championships left, right, and center over the years. But I think it's a different level now, and I've really seen that his intensity in terms of race duels has gotten a lot more aggressive, not to the point that it becomes dirty, but he's certainly willing to rub fenders and get his elbows out, and that's what's necessary at this level to get success.
And as we've said, coming from a stock car background, I would say Colin Garrett would be right at home with that too, and here they are. Garrett got really wide at the exit of turn 1, top of the hill, and that has left him vulnerable. Here comes Kevin Bohm closing in little by little. We saw a moment ago John Capestre Dubets suited and booted. He's ready to hop aboard the 28 for RS1. Eric Filgaris has dropped off of this lead duo now, 6.5 seconds behind the battle for the lead. And Eric actually led the opening portions of this race after getting around Tony Gaples.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's traffic related. He's certainly not been within, what, 7-8 tenths of the pace of these BMWs here this afternoon, or whether that's just how it's sort of factored out over the course of the full stint here. But they've certainly got some options. When you got two very evenly matched drivers, if Eric's tires are going off the boil a little bit, or they're peaked in terms of the pressures, you could always bring him in so you don't lose too much ground. But again, you know, we've got good, clean racing. We've seen that being showcased so far in this championship this season so far. But 3 hours to race. Are we going to go caution free? That would be highly unlikely, but as we can see at this racetrack, there's so much runoff room here, maybe it is possible.
A couple of Supras fighting in the mid-pack right here. John Jesbray in his number 68 gear wrench car for Smooge Racing. Lindstrom behind for Auto Technic. Jesbray continues to chase Mike Lamara. Cool to see Mike stepping into this program alongside Ryan Eversley. LA Precision Racing, the team. They've had a nice day. Started out back and have slowly but surely made their way forward up to 16th now.
Yeah, a ton of experience. Lamara and Eversley being teamed together, so they'll be certainly looking for a strong result here today. Got a fast race car underneath them.
This is an impressive young guy. Matt Million made his debut at Sonoma Raceway. Another one that got promoted out of the M class. Pit lane about to get awfully, awfully busy here in the coming laps.
Yeah, and you basically have to be on pit lane 50 minutes into this race, which is obviously 2 hours, 10 minutes. Filgaris is in. And Amanda, what are you hearing?
Down to Amanda.
Yeah, you can see Roman DeAngelis right there on the wall. The fuel guy's already over the wall. They're going to get ready for this first stop. You can imagine the excitement and probably a little anxiety for these crew guys, but I did see Ian James go over to Bimmer World and talk to Tyler McQuarrie, who also has his helmet on, and let them know at what lap that they were coming in, as you'll see this 24 make it in right now. That's going to be the issue of spacing here on this pit lane as we start getting busy into this first window for pit stops.
That was a wild moment coming into the pits there. Mike Lamara appeared to be off the pace, and you saw the Auto Technic car come by. That's something that came up in the driver's meeting. Let's look at it again. Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of time that could be made up on pit entry, and yeah, some that the drivers need to practice. I noticed over in Europe, being over there for obviously decades, you know, the intensity of every single time you come into the pit lane, find out where that threshold is without taking unnecessary risk and running into the pit wall, but bringing it in as hard as you can gain valuable tenths, sometimes seconds there in terms of the pit stop exchange.
So RS1 has completed its pit stop. Pretty good work by that crew. JCD now in the car. Is that fuel coming down the side? Kind of looked like it.
90 seconds is the time on pit lane. You're allowed to be up to 1 second underneath that, but then however much you're underneath that will be times by 10 and being a penalty either at the end of the race if it happens on your final pit stop, or will be added to your next pit stop in the middle of this race today.
Any additional time under 1 second under the minimum, that will result in not just a drive-through here this weekend, but actually a stop and hold penalty. And the reason for that is the rule makers noticed, with the pit lane being the length it is here, there was a way you could game the system theoretically. We've seen that done in the California 8 Hour several years ago, and they wanted to make sure that didn't happen. So that's why the change in regulation was put in place.
Yeah, if you're underneath more than a second underneath, you're going to be a stop and hold for the amount that you're underneath. So if you just fly through pit lane and you're 30 seconds late, well, guess what? You're going to come in and sit still for another 30 seconds.
Bohm continues to push. He'll need to be in, I think, this lap to not run afoul of the 50-minute maximum stint. As long as you're in the pit lane before you hit that and exceed that time, everything is good.
Yeah, he's definitely going to struggle to do one more after this, looking at the clock and how it's running down, so he'll be in this lap.
Demir Hott also still owes a pit stop. Rob Holland, Charlie Postins, who continue to battle for the AM lead, along with Isabella Robusto, also owe a pit stop, along with a few others. And once these pit stops cycle through, we'll have a better sense of who executed and who did not down in the pit lane. This was the car that led with Colin Garrett. It's now Zach Anderson behind the wheel. One difference here with this Enduro format, normally we're talking about needing to save the tires for your co-driver in the second half of the race without pit stops in a normal Pirelli GT4 America race, for tires at least. But that's not the case here. There are tires for basically every stint. Looks like Bohm will make that call to the pits as expected. He's certainly pushing the envelope down to that pit speed limit mark.
Yeah, you could see there with the time left on the board with another lap, when they're running, what, 2:16's his fast lap, he'd be outside of that 50-minute stint time if he stayed out there for one more. So anyone who hasn't pit lane, they've got a big problem unless they're on pit lane this next time through.
And now it's time for the Random Vandals team to go to work here, get their job done. That's one of the talking points throughout the paddock coming into this event. There are a lot of ways that these pit stops can ruin a good race. You need to execute, especially some of these teams that don't do a lot of live pit stops. Random Vandals does have some experience with it, certainly running in series like WRL, and they've also run in GT4 at IBSA where there are pit stops, so they should be well prepared for it.
Yeah, and looking at these pit stops, there's not many near that 1 minute 30 mark on pit lane. Fastest at 1:30.5, so that's just outside. That's right, spot on. But there's a lot of 1:34s, 1:35s, 1:36s. So teams are certainly living 5-6 seconds on the table right now. So they need to sharpen that up. Otherwise, it's going to cost them over the course of 3 pit stops here today.
Looks like a pretty clean stop so far for Random Vandals. as Anderson coming back in. We saw that car weaving a little bit back and forth as if maybe he felt something was loose on the outlap. In the meantime, here comes Kenton Cook. This car should inherit the lead effectively. But what is going on with the 51?
Yeah, they had a nice pit stop first time through. 131.1, only a second outside of the minimum. So I wonder if they didn't get a wheel tightened up or something.
Again, I did see that car. We got a brief look at it on the outlap, and it kind of looked like he was trying to lean on both sides.
Left front there, certainly looking down in that left front corner. Maybe they didn't get all the lug nuts on or something.
I would certainly put them behind the 8-ball. Working on the left-hand side of that car. Pretty well-oiled operation at Auto Technic. They're in scramble mode right now. This is costing them dearly. As they sit stationary, the rest of the field is cycling through.
Wow, what a disappointment. And this is a big, big event. Double points, let's not forget.
Yeah, huge moment potentially in this championship. Still early in the going, but that said, every point matters. Some of these championships have come down to the wire over the past few seasons. Championships for this car in recent years have not. They have dominated the AM class the last 2 years, but are on the back foot a little bit this season. The Bimmer World AM class car. But this should be the leader here with Kenton Cook now driving, giving chase John Capestre Dubens. That's the Porsche that's coming through the picture right there. They benefit from the misfortune for Auto Technic, but a little bit of lap traffic to deal with here. Skip Barber Racing entry just up the road. That's 1 lap down to the overall leader.
Yeah, just waiting for everything to cycle through on timing and scoring, with a lot of cars just leaving pit lane, and sometimes you cross the timing and scoring line on pit lane itself, so it takes a while to sort itself out.
Here comes the 51 out of the pits. I think we've got an update on what's going on with Anderson and company with Amanda down in the pits.
Yeah, I was just briefly talking with Colin Garrett during all that hold here on pit lane. And I have to tell you, the drivers getting out of these cars are exhausted. So I was able to get a couple words in with Colin during that as he was helplessly looking on. Said it was brake fluid that was leaking. Didn't notice an issue during his stint on, so that's what they were assessing there. And in the panic of the team as they released the car to go out, they released it on the block that was underneath the BMW, so they had to re-raise before they could get that BMW out. So pit stops sure are active down here, guys.
I wonder if they hit something putting the wheel on, if there's something they could have hit, like a brake connector or something there, but obviously disappointment on the back foot big time. Going to need a lot of strategy, a little bit of help with some full course yellows possibly to get back in the game here today.
Hopefully the repair stuck as well. That's the other question mark, of course.
Yeah.
Matt Billion. This is a battle for position 14 overall. Assuming it is still Matt, it is Matt behind the wheel. He's racing with Roman DeAngelis right now. If that is the case, boy, that's some lofty company to be keeping. Roman's super quick. Matt's pretty young in his GT racing career. In the meantime, I think this is a change of position in the AM class through the pit stop shuffles. Put James Clay out ahead of the Rotec racing car. It's Jaden Lander now behind the wheel. Rob Holland started that car. So that's a change for a position. And here's another good fight like we talked about. Roman DeAngelis in the Heart of Racing car. And he's running just ahead of Matt Million.
Roman DeAngelis, busy boy, fully ensconced with this Heart of Racing team, won championships for them. Ian James, who's the team leader, really believes in Roman. They co-drove together back for, I think it might have been for WRT at the Rolex 24 one year, and really liked what he saw in the young Canadian. Obviously came through the Carrera Cup with a stellar resume, and since that time just been tied at the hip, and Roman's done an excellent job. Really nice young man, full of speed and brings everything that you need to be a top pro driver to the table.
He's been named to an LMP2 drive at the 24 Hours of Le Mans later this year for Algarve Pro Racing, joining Matthias Kaiser and Ollie Caldwell. That's a pretty good lineup for sure. So exciting stuff for Roman De Angelis to get a taste of prototype racing in June. Speaking of Rotec Racing, we mentioned change for the lead in the AM class. It had been that Porsche at the front of the field, but now it's all James Clay. Jaden Lander settling into a rhythm, running in the second spot. And here is Kevin Conway. This is the car Isabella Robusto started. Kevin Conway shifting back into the driver's seat. And after serving primarily as team manager to start this season, but first, second, and third in the AM class, 7th, 8th, and 9th overall.
Yeah, good little battle there for AM, well inside the top 10. Your top 4 on the leaderboard right now, all silver class cars, then a couple of Pro-Am cars. Ivan Berlo now leads in Pro-Am. Rodrigo Baptista sits in second. So what happened to the Black Dog car during that round of pit stops? Because they had the early race lead. They've plummeted down the order.
That is a good question. I think we may have gotten an update.
Showing them 3 laps down now.
Yeah, there was some steam coming out during the pit stop. This is thanks to the PR staff from Black Dog. Initially, they did not have any of the same issues the other Nissans had, but the steam coming out sounds a bit like overheating, and if I'm not mistaken, that's what Tech Sport was complaining about with their 2 Nissans early in the going.
Oh, that's a shame, because that team were having a great run here today. Tony Gables did an awesome job from the pole position that was won by Michael Cooper here this morning, so Michael will be frustrated if he doesn't get to see any action here. He had a commitment in Porsche Carrera Cup at the Miami Grand Prix when we last competed at Sebring. So Max Root was brought on board, and they scored that first victory for the team, first victory for Nissan. So disappointed to miss that. Wanted to bounce back here this weekend, put the car on pole, but you will not see any action unless they can get that car fixed.
Tough break as well for Michael Oriema and Matthias Lace. They have retired with a cracked radiator. Getting a clarification that it was not steam, it was a typo in the text message. Stream, not steam. So, okay, not an overheating thing, but there is an issue on the driver's side of the Black Dog car. We'll try and get more information about that if we can. Tyler McQuarrie, by the way, I believe just set the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race. He had it for a moment. I think Zach Anderson has since taken it away. But McQuarrie is flying in this number 82 car that currently sits 10th overall. James Walker Jr. had a nice, steady start to this race, and James wants to say happy graduation to his daughter Shelby, who is due to walk in like an hour and a half, basically. He obviously couldn't be there, so he sends his condolences and his congratulations. The rest of the Walker family is there for the graduation ceremony, and he says a big hearty thank you to the family for understanding his racing passion and why he needed to be a couple hours down the road here at Circuit of the Americas from his home just outside the Houston area.
Yeah, and just imagine the dinner conversation over the last few months, right? But it's a double points weekend. I have to be there.
Cal, I don't believe the conversation happened a few months ago. I think it happened a little more recently than that, based on the conversation that I was hearing earlier today. But a good run so far for that team. Well, we were wondering what's going on with Black Dog Speed Shop. They led this race early. Amanda has more for us.
Yeah, I was just talking to one of the crew guys, and he said that there was actually issues with, I believe he said, the left rear tire with the stripping of the wheel. They couldn't get the thread of the nut to catch as they were trying to do that tire change. So as you can see, kind of packing up here for Black Dog, but that will be the conclusion for the great start by Tony Gables.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking. That car had great pace. That team looked like they were on top of things. Amanda mentioned the fact they had brought in DXDT to help with the pit stops. It's been a big weekend for DXDT already.
Yeah, very much so. Grabbing the Chevy Corvette's first victory at the GT3 level on the global stage, that is. Got 7 cars out there in DXD grabbed the first win with Alec Udell and Corvette Racing Factory driver Tommy Milner. So exciting times. They said they're going to party tonight, but not too hard. Another big race here tomorrow.
Not so for these teams and drivers. Just the one race for Pirelli GT4 America this weekend because of the extended race format. Trying something new with a 3-hour Lonestar Enduro here at Circuit of the Americas, because otherwise we'd be 5 seconds away from the checkered flag. A normal Pirelli GT4 America race would end now. Instead, we've got 2 hours still to go.
Plenty of meat on the table right now, that's for sure. Kenton Cook, though, doing a really solid job. Got that lead up to nearly 8 seconds over John Capestro-Dubets. Running really fast lap times. Ran a 2:16 flat. Not quite as quick as Zach Anderson has run so far this afternoon, but just repeated 2:16s. That's a really great pace by Kenton Cook up front.
Tough break here for JMF Motorsports. Demi Chalkis owes a pit stop, or a penalty rather. Pit lane infraction, 5-second penalty, so I believe they must have been half a second under on the minimum.
Yeah, that was it. Looking at the data right now, they did a one. Actually, they should be good. I'm looking at their pit stop, 135.4. So.
Well, a pit lane infraction is the penalty, and a similar penalty issued to this car, the M-Class car for Brandon Vandals. Chris Wilson now driving. Side-by-side battle here. This is headed down the backstretch, and James Clay, I believe, is one of the cars involved. The other is Hannah Grisham. So Hannah Grisham, Hannah Greenmeyer, they were running towards the front in that opening stint, and they've dropped well down the order. I've sent word to Amanda to check on that, so I anticipate an update here soon. In fact, I think I got one. Very bad stop, dropped the car while still changing tires, and that cost them dearly in the pit lane. That's a surprise, because if we're looking at teams that have plenty of endurance racing experience doing pit stops, Heart of Racing certainly comes to mind with what they do at the GT3 level all around the world.
Yeah, very much so. A lot of ex-Panos and Alex Job Racing mechanics that Ian James has worked with over the years. Here's a spin for the JMF car, I think, coming off of turn 20.
That's Demi Chalkis, who has spun. That's one of the cars we were talking about that has one of those penalties coming. Demi was running in the top 5 overall at the time of this spin. And there is some right front damage, it would appear, on this car. Ah, boy. Or is that just... No, there is a little bit of damage at least. The dive plane certainly is dislodged on the right side.
I understand the penalty on this car is for the refueling with the engine running, and the other infraction was for tires over the wall before the car was in its pit stall, as we understand. So again, all of these teams just getting... Oh, that was close there. Locked horns there. That BMW almost went for a ride there.
That's the class leader in AM as well that had that wild ride and scary moment there. So boy, James Clay, no longer the class leader in AM, it would appear.
Like their terrible start to the season was going to continue there. Great car control there by James Clay in terms of straightening that car back out again. That was close for a big one.
That promotes Jayden Lander to the lead for Rotec Racing, unless that's a timing and scoring issue, and I think that might be the case because Clay is there, Lander is there, and we'll have to sort that one out. Nevertheless, it certainly was a heart in your throat kind of moment for that squad, who has had more than anyone's fair share of ill fortune to start this year. And it's doubly shocking because this is the team that has absolutely dominated the M-Class each of the past 2 seasons.
Great visual there of James Clay absolutely on the limit there into that brake zone, just dancing that car on its toes there into the brake zone. Arms were busy inside, just keeping it in a straight line, so he's pushing hard. And he dodged a big moment there through those high-speed S's when he locked horns there with the Mercedes.
Clay able to settle back in. Looks like that's been corrected on timing and scoring, so Clay still shown roughly where he should be. 6th overall with Tyler McQuarrie inbound in the team car. That's the red car. just behind.
It's a really solid run, though, to be running 6 overall in the M class this early in the race. Is a great drive by he and Charlie so far today.
For sure. This is exactly what they've needed. But still a long way to go, of course, to try and secure as many points as possible to get them back in the points picture. Wonder how this is going to play out with the team car coming through. McQuarrie charging. I tell you what, this has been a really good drive for this team. Tyler McQuarrie, James Walker Jr. up into 3rd in class after starting towards the back here today. Now, doesn't look like the team boss, James Clay, has any intention of making this easy on Tyler McQuarrie. Not that he's making it overly difficult, but he's by no means pulled out of the way to make this pass happen. Here comes McQuarrie to the inside of James Clay. And this time the team boss lets the team car on through. Well, we talked about the crazy slide he had, the wild moment. Oh. There were a number of ways that could have ended a whole lot worse for all involved.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have bet on that one in terms of coming out with that same conclusion. So really nice job. We were focused on McQuarrie there. Got the season off to a great start. He and James Walker won the opening round at Sonoma, followed up with a podium run on day 2, but had a disaster at Sebring, only scoring 2 points over the course of both races there. So it's kind of cost them championship position, sitting there in P5 coming into this race weekend.
Warning to this car, Demi Chalkis, incident responsibility, the contact there at turn 4, and James Clay's save probably saved this car a greater penalty.
Yeah, could have been more than a warning, but anyway, through the walls a little bit, had the spin, coming on the front straightaway, and then you're just trying to get back into a groove, kind of find your position back in the race. And got a little bit too close there through those high speed airs. You've got to give each other a little bit of room, and just kind of tagged the rear end of James Clay there, nearly turned him.
Let's check in towards the front of the field. We haven't done so in a little while. Kitten Cook continues to show the way. John Capestre-Dubets runs 2nd. This car, though, now driven by Calvin Fish's personal chauffeur, Parker Thompson, sits in the 3rd spot. If you enjoyed that track preview, you can thank Parker Thompson, at least in part. He was really pushing that car around. He had a handful of opposite lock a few times. Were you having fun or were you scared?
I did, but all I was looking for was an Uber to go and get some lunch, and suddenly he showed up and said hop in, so don't know how I ended up out there. But yeah, he certainly is a great driver. Certainly fun to do these Fanatec GT track previews with Parker. Immense talent. Toyota loves him, obviously has that Toyota-Lexus relationship going strong at this early stage of his career, but top shelf driver, and he's done a great job here with Daniel Hanley in terms of mentoring him. So even though Parker's relatively early in his career, he's still got the experience advantage over someone like Daniel, and just teaching him the ropes. It's a great combination. They're having a lot of fun.
That car is fun to watch when he's behind the wheel. There's just a level of aggression you can see just from watching the car on the outside. Parker extracting absolutely everything from that car, and as you saw a moment ago on screen, he is closing in on John Capestre-Dubets. That last time by, though, yeah, it was still considerably quicker, wasn't it? Just over a second. Is 999 Supra.
Yeah, he's flying right now, but there's a number of cars that are really quick. We were focused on McQuarrie a little while ago. He's been running laps there. Last lap was in the mid-16 range, about the same pace as Thompson, who was over a second quicker than JCD on that previous lap. So he's closing in on that 2nd position in the silver class right now. But Kenton Cook looking comfortable out front to the tune of about 11 seconds.
Got some cool stories developing in Pro-Am 2. Top 3 in Pro-Am run 4th, 5th, and 6th on the road, led by Kai Van Berlo. But the return of Rodrigo Baptista, that was a pleasant surprise on the entry list. And we can talk more about that as the race goes along, but very, very cool to see. I think we'll focus in instead here on this, because this should be a fight for 2nd overall and in the silver class very soon.
Yeah, great to see Baptista back. He actually came across our radar in GT4, and he actually was a little aggressive in his early races there and caught the eye of the stewards on a number of occasions, but he settled down nicely. Then he got the GT3 opportunity with K-Pax and with Flying Lizard, and had great success aboard one of their Bentley machines there.
Sure did. Finished third in Fanatec GT. It was known by a different name at the time in the Pro class, paired with Maxime Soulet. I was in one of those Bentleys, then raced in the Pro-Am class the following year in 2020, actually with the TR3 racing squad. This is a different battle, though, here. Not actually for position. We've got the lapped NOLA Sport car.
Hey,
And behind the, and trying to make the pass, is the leader in the Pro-Am class. We talked about Kai van Berlo a moment ago, doing a really nice job. Needs to carve his way through this traffic, though, because Baptista will be doing everything in his power to close in. It's been pretty difficult. Not an easy part of the track to catch lap traffic, especially if the lap car has some decent pace. Back here to the front. John Capester Dubets, Parker Thompson fighting for second and third on the road.
Yeah, Parker's just laying down lap after lap within a tenth or two of a second of each lap there. So his fast lap at 1:16.2 just laid down at 1:16.3, about a second and a half quicker than JCD immediately in front of him. So he's got the hammer down. Just seems like the Porsche may be a little bit vulnerable in the heat. As we said, rolled off the truck really quick, looked good in the cooler conditions. It was really mild here early in the weekend, but certainly the temperatures have ramped up after that storm came through. And suddenly a lot of the other manufacturers have caught these Porsches, and it's showcasing itself here in the race conditions today.
Thompson has arrived. Phil Garris, who was warned, actually I say Phil Garris, it's now John Capester Dubets. Don't know if that warning carries over or not with a different driver behind the wheel, but that car was warned with a different driver for moving in reaction.
Yeah, I think track limits do.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about individual drivers' behavior. I don't think so, but I know on the track limits it was per car, not per driver.
Track limits, that's definitely the case, yes. Thompson closing in just that little bit more, fighting for second and third here in the silver class. Dan Hanley started that number 999 car, just his second year of racing. He has come on leaps and bounds, thanks in large part to the tutelage of Parker Thompson, of course.
JCD so savvy, just the subtle positioning of the car there for the entry of that low speed corner. You would sense that Parker was thinking about shooting it down the inside, but just where a real seasoned pro can place the race car, really determines what the guy behind you is going to do. But it's over right now as Parker makes an easy move there down through turn 19. So I think for JCD, they realize that they just got to play the long game here, hoping that the racetrack cools down a little bit in the final hour and see if the performance and the racetrack comes back to them a little bit.
Well, we were telling the story of James Walker Jr. a little bit earlier in this show. Tyler McQuarrie's got the car under his controls at the moment, running third in the Pro-Am class, but James is standing by in the pits with Amanda on a special, special day for the Walker family.
It is a very special day, and you have to play role of race car driver and father. What's going on?
Well, we managed to go from P11 to P3 in the first stint in Pro-Am. Tyler McQuarrie is out there killing her right now. We had a little bit of a hold to dig out in qualifying, but we're on our way, and we are feeling so good here in this Bimmer World pit today. It's been a fantastic first half of the race for us.
Yeah, and what else is happening? There's another part to this.
My 18-year-old daughter's graduating in about an hour. I can't think I'm getting choked up. Shelby, I love you. I'm so sorry I'm missing your graduation day, but what a day. We're going to win for you, darling. We love you. We love you at home. Thank you. Thanks for letting Daddy do this. Thank you.
Man, don't you just love this paddock, guys?
Yes, it is special, that's for sure. This could be a really special day for James for so many reasons. Right now, sitting in podium contention, but you heard him call his shot. He said he's going to win this thing.
There you go. Made the statement, see if they can follow through. Certainly McQuarrie right now is absolutely flying aboard that number 82 race car. Sits third in Pro-Am, got a couple of really fast drivers in front of him, Kai van Berlo, Rodrigo Baptista. And they're going to be the finishing drivers as well as we rotate through the driver shuffle here during this race.
Speaking of the driver shuffle, we had a couple of cars come in towards the early stages of what is the de facto window. Might see a few more pit stops here before too much longer. These are cars that by and large went pretty late in that opening stint. Great job by that Bimmer World team, by the way. They're putting together a couple of really quick cars. We've got McQuarrie running third in Pro-Am, but also James Clay leading in the Am class with really clean, well, I say really clean pit stops. Actually, they were a little bit on the slow side. And in spite of that, they still find themselves in pretty strong position, especially if there were to be a full course yellow. That would be to the benefit of both the 82 and the 36 at this stage.
Yeah, it would certainly compress this field a little bit as we see some bigger gaps there towards the top 6 overall. Kenan Cook continues to expand that lead a little bit now with Parker Thompson up into P2. We'll have to watch that gap and see how that evolves. Last lap, Parker Thompson about 3 or 4 tenths quicker than our leader.
And this was Tom Dyer and Chris Wilson. They came close together, but I'm not sure there was any contact there.
I'm not sure they touched.
It's rare to see Tom make an error. Nevertheless, did not appear that there was any contact between the two. It doesn't look like it's waylaid him too much. Dyer running 16th at the moment.
He's a driver who came through the single-seater ranks, really had a good single-seater career going and has really made his name as a co-driver at this level in GT4 machinery. Is really rock solid, has a ton of pace, really nice young man, and does a really great job. And he's the perfect mentor for someone coming through like Todd Parriott to learn from and, you know, just gradually creep up his performance ladder.
Another update from the pits. We've been chronicling the travails of the Nissans here in the heat in this endurance format, and it looks like another casualty is the Flying Lizard car. Rodrigo Baptista has pulled into the pits with a power steering issue that's very similar to what we heard from the Tech Sport side of things, and as a result, it looks like Rodrigo Baptista and Tabir Haat, in a car that started on the front row of this race, they have retired the car due to those issues. Keeping in mind, it's still very early in the development stages on that car. Oh, this is gonna be interesting. Wilson late on the brakes around Conway. And looks like Chris will pick up another spot. He continues to charge forward. As for third in
there.
M.
Ton of experience between those two, having a great little fun battle out there this afternoon.
Yeah, two great personalities too.
For P3 in the AM class.
Chris Wilson, so many years road racing. Kevin Conway, there was a time, I would suppose, he was probably better known for his stock car racing career, including winning the Cup Series Rookie of the Year. Oh, it's probably been 10, 15 years ago. I'd have to look up the date on that, but transition to sports car racing. He's been linked up with Tony Ave and that group. They've helped with some of the logistics for the Smooth Racing team over the years. And runs a really nice program there for Smooth Racing. Does a nice job behind the wheel too when he's asked to do so, but also does a lot of work to help manage that team and also manage the career of John Jesbray, who he's taken under his wing. And John has never ceased to impress us with his talent and acumen behind the wheel.
Kevin's a great guy. Chris Wilson, just love his personality. Always got a smile on his face, just enjoys racing, has so much passion for it. Didn't think he was going to be running this year, and then he got a late call to run alongside Paul Sparta, who ran with Al Carter last year, and for some reason that didn't quite work out to continue for this season. But it happened late in the off season, so Chris didn't think he had a deal, and then suddenly he finds himself with a championship lead after 4 races of this 24 season, so that's a cool story.
He's in the Random Vandals BMW you see there. This is Kevin Conway, who we were talking about moments ago. 2010 was that Cup Series Rookie of the Year. Admittedly, the only other rookie that year, Terry Cook, only ran a handful of races, but still, you get it on the resume. You can't take it away. And he comes from a racing family. His father, Sam, was actually the team manager for Darrell Waltrip when Darrell owned his own Cup Series team. So long and deep racing roots for Kevin Conway.
Great pedigree. I'm sure there's some great stories that his father can tell, running a Darrell for a number of years.
Sadly, his father passed away in 2007, but yeah, Kevin with no shortage of stories from those days. Got his start in some respects as an instructor with the Richard Petty driving experience. Not sure anybody else has that on their resume in this race here today. Ooh, that was tight.
That was a little ugly. Not sure that was really necessary, but here we go. Didn't see what preceded it.
No, there might be more to that story.
Yeah.
There's Jaden Lander, currently second in the AM class for Rotec Racing. This is a team that, if you trace its heritage, actually has quite a bit of long-distance racing experience, specifically at the Nürburgring, but this North American incarnation does not. And so Rob Holland actually dialed up Carl Thompson to help run the team here this weekend. Carl, for many, many years, helped to run Compass Racing, Compass 360. It had a couple of different names over the years, but Carl has so much experience running teams in endurance racing, so came aboard for the weekend to help out, and it was great to bump into Carl in the paddock earlier this weekend.
And he said, I'm here just to really keep the pit stops nice and clean and just execution, get everyone well trained as we go into this 3-hour race. So a ton of experience, another one of our great personalities in the sport. Great to see him back.
Of course, he and Jill Beck were the owners of that Compass Racing team. Did our best to Jill. It was great to bump into her at Long Beach. But omnipresent in sports car racing really over the past 10, 15 years or so.
Some good people in motorsport, and they're two of the best.
What are we looking at here? This is Conway reeling in the Nick Shanny started BMW.
Chris Walsh is in there this weekend,
right.
So I'm not sure how that one occurred, because Terry Borscheller is the regular teammate for Nick Shanny. We saw Chris in one of the practice sessions yesterday. I'm not sure if Terry was just not available for the day, but Chris has obviously had a tremendous start to his TCX season. Won his 5th straight race here today, so he's already seen victory lane here earlier in the weekend.
That's right, undefeated on the season. Does have GT4 experience going back to last year. In the meantime, Auto Technic in the pits. This is probably about the right time to begin the next sequence of pit stops. This is Tom Dyer here recovering from that spin we saw earlier. Closing in on the halfway mark here, Calvin. With an hour 37 minutes on the clock in this first of its kind 3-hour Enduro that has run without interruption from the drop of the green flag.
Yeah, it's been a really clean season in general. Just some superb racing. Last year, I think there were too many incidents, and it really ruined everyone's day. And so much effort and commitment goes into participating in this championship. And I think the stewards and the series and everyone's done a really nice job of working with the drivers, getting them to be a bit more disciplined. And just by doing that, as I say, just giving up 1 or 2% of the aggression just allows everyone to coexist, and we can go green flag racing, which is what it's all about. But getting back to this race and the strategy of you seeing pit stops right now, it's a 3-stop day, and we're getting to that halfway point where the second stops are now occurring. And they'll continue for the next 15, 20 minutes or so.
Conway here, Walsh just up the road. That is for position in the AM class, and Denny Stripling not too far ahead there. That also would be for position. This is not. This is the leader, Kenton Cook, checking in with him again as he comes through and puts a lap on the Krug Speed machine. And it's now Anthony Girazzi behind the wheel. Elevan Goulart started that car. We drop back here, and that's how far you have to go to find second place.
But it's
Parker
closing.
Thompson.
It is closing.
Yep.
It was up around 12 seconds when JCD was running in second spot. Now Parker has taken over second spot. He's closed in on the leader a little bit, just so consistent. I mean, every single lap where he's not affected by traffic is in the 216 bracket. Just got very much into a rhythm now. Race has settled down.
You can see on the graphic the rate at which Parker Thompson has been closing in on Kenton Cook. Took big swings at it in laps 34 and 36, a little bit less in lap 35, but the consistent trend is that he's been closer lap after lap after lap, and that's how the gap starts to come down. Did look like Kevin Bohm in the leading car had the pace advantage on the 999 when it was driven by Dan Handley, but it's interesting how it swings back the other direction after the driver change.
Yeah, and the drivers that are on board right now for this stint will become the finishing drivers, who will rotate back to the starting drivers for the next stint and then back to the finishers, which we're seeing on board right now.
Problems for the 53. That is now Troy Lindstrom back in that car. He started this car, actually. We saw them on pit lane a moment ago, so that makes me wonder if something went wrong at the pit stop, and now he's going to have to limp around. He and Matt Millian debuted at Sonoma. Lindstrom was not behind the wheel at Sebring, but he's back here this weekend. And another car with an issue. That car has clearly lost a wheel. You can see it in the background. That's Kevin Conway.
Yeah, left rear possibly.
And had he pitted? I don't think so.
I don't think so if he's behind the wheel, because he'd been in for this stint, so I don't think it was right after a pit stop.
Oh, and that car is stopped. This is really interesting where this could potentially lead to a full course yellow right in the middle of the pit sequence here. There's just not much flexibility in what you're doing strategically to necessarily take advantage of it. It's more of who this might be a case of fortune smiling on.
Well, if you're close to that 50-minute maximum stint time, and you need to get to pit lane, if they do close the pit lane by go full course yellow, they'll allow you to extend until the pit lane is open, and then you need to dive in and take your service.
Well, Amanda's reporting that Kevin Bohm just threw his helmet on rapidly and could be preparing for a driver change here with Kenton Cook. That might be the thought process, at least on the Random Vandal side of things. We stay green for the moment. Race Control did say in the driver's meeting, if they feel the car is in not a super compromised position, that they will try to give the field a chance to make a pit stop if they choose, so as not to throw a total spanner into the works. Clearly, the RS1 crew is elected to do so. That's John Capestro-Dubets getting out. Eric Filgaris getting back in. The fuel is done, and now it's the tires going on. This is the wheel coming off of the car for Kevin Conway. Watch the left rear here.
Yeah, he's just trying to bring it back slowly, and then it suddenly comes off the hub.
Very strange. And that looks poised to bring potentially the full course caution out for the first time. Kenton Cook has remained on the track for the moment. We did see RS1 make their pit stop, covering off a potential yellow. What will the overall leader do? Will they get the chance to come in? For now, it looks like the answer is yes. A lot of teams, though, see the potential opportunity here, Calvin.
Yeah, they do. Curious to see what this team does. If they stay out, they could put a number of the teams a lap down by electing to stay on the racetrack, but no, they dive for pit lane as well, so not going to run the risk of that gamble. And basically it works out quite nicely in terms of coming in right now. You can split the distance to the finish. You'd be looking at like 2 45-minute stints, and as the leader pits now, they send the safety car out there, go full course yellow.
That means Parker Thompson could not pit. The pits were closed, and I saw him and he was still out on the track. So that splits the strategy of the lead group then.
It does. There he is. He stayed on the racetrack. You can see him coming up into turn 1 right now.
And there's the safety car that will pick up the new leader overall. But how does this affect this car strategically?
Well, it hurts him because now he's stuck behind the safety car at safety car speed. I was thinking if the leader stayed out and continued at full pace, you could put a number of the cars a lap down, but Parker's not going to be able to do that. because the safety car lap around here is, you know, probably close to 3.5 minutes or whatever.
When the yellow comes out, the pit lane closes. Okay, this was the car we saw limping back as well with Lindstrom. And he's pulled off to the side of the road. So we have 2 cars stranded. One is the Smooge Racing Supra. The other is this Autotechnic BMW. And we are full course yellow for the first time in the race as we approach the halfway mark in just 8 seconds.
Yeah, and essentially what's going to happen, a lot of these front-running cars will now exit pit lane. They'll shuffle back up behind Parker Thompson. Then he's close to his maximum stint time anyway, so he'll have to come in when the pit lane opens. And then, obviously, he's going to lose a lot of track position when he puts Daniel Hanley back behind the wheel.
Wave to send Kevin Beaumont on a set of sticker Pirelli P0s. It was a slower stop, but that shouldn't matter too much with the yellow.
It'll have no effect, really. It's not like there are other cars on pit lane that leapfrogged around them.
Kai Van Berlo is shown as having just passed through the pits, I think. It shows having a 37-second pit stop, so I wonder if they came in
with
and...
the pit closed, you are allowed to just travel through.
That's what I wonder if that might have happened. I think we can get more from the pits now with Amanda.
Yeah, it was just overlooking the 97 stop, and there towards the end of that, after the driver change, the team was directing Kevin Boehm to leave, and it seemed like he was struggling to get the BMW fired. But, you know, you got to give it up to everyone for this challenge of this 3-hour enduro here at the Lonestar Enduro. But Kevin's wife looked at me, and she was like, man, this is stressful.
Yeah, it is. Kevin looks fresh as a daisy, though, remarkably.
Yeah, just debriefing there with Colin Harmer, one of the BMW techs who are always on hand, giving great support to their customer racing programs. But it's another issue. You got all that heat, and you're not used to doing these enduros. Suddenly you have to shut the engine down for the refueling. Will it fire up? Suddenly you can get that heat soak in the engine, and struggling to get life back in there. It turns into a bit of a panic situation when you can't get any life back in the race car.
Now, there's going to be some things to sift through here strategically. I'm curious how this is all going to work out as they let everybody cycle through. And per usual, we will defer to our strategist extraordinaire, Calvin. What do you think the implications of this yellow falling where it did will be strategically?
Well, I think for Parker Thompson, we already went through it. Essentially, he missed the opportunity to go on pit lane. He's getting, I don't have all of the stint lengths, unfortunately, but he's got to be getting close to being maxed out, so he's got to come to pit lane. And essentially, by not being able to put the field a lap down, he's going to be leading the pack right now. And then all of the other leaders are topped up with fuel, done their driver change. So he'll come to pit lane, and Daniel Hanley will then assume the reins of that race car, but will lose a ton of track position. So just a little bit unfortunate there. They saw the cars stranded there. I think there was a couple of laps where they elected not to come in. So rolled the dice a little bit and just bit them. Unfortunately, it seemed like the stewards were just waiting for the leader to pit. And once they did, they immediately went full course yellow.
That puts them on the back foot. The car currently shown second is actually this green and white car right here with Kai Van Berlo. We mentioned that it looks like they passed through the pit lane.
Yeah, so he's got to get out of the race car as well here shortly. So several of the finishing drivers have to get out and get their starting drivers back behind the wheel. And because everyone stopped on a slightly different lap, I'm not sure exactly where everyone sits. Don't have that data available to me, but for sure they're not going to go too deep. If they're already at the 50-minute mark, as soon as pit lane opens, they have to come. But if they've still got some minutes left on their stint, they could elect to stay out a little bit longer, but I don't really see the point in that.
One other element to keep in mind from a regulations standpoint is how the classes will be handled with wave-arounds and things of that nature. And I think where this yellow fell, and especially with some lapping having begun, what can we expect to see in terms of how race control handles that situation?
Well, I think they're going to wait and see what some of these cars do, who obviously wanted to get to pit lane and didn't. So I think they'll let that shuffle out and then get the field have a bit of a reset. They may do a wave by to find the first class leader, which will probably be Kevin Boehm, I think, will probably end up with the lead once we shuffle through everyone here in pit lane. We'll have to wait and see.
Just under 90 minutes to go in this first ever 3-hour Enduro for Pirelli GT4 America. As you see, Parker Thompson, Kai Van Berlo first and second, but they will need to pit, having not made their pit stops prior to this safety car and running up close to the maximum stint length at this point. Everybody else, barring probably McQuarrie amongst the leaders, would be in pretty good position. It's Dan Hanley.
Well, he doesn't look too mad. I realize that the challenge has got a little bit bigger to try and get this win here, but Daniel Hanley, fun young man, really a great personality. I enjoyed getting to meet him this year and seeing what he's all about.
Well, that team was formed just a few weeks before the start of the season last year. It was put together very late, and yet they consistently punched above their weight. Now, the results didn't always reflect that, but the pace weekend to weekend was remarkable. And Parker Thompson, I think, deserves a great deal of thanks for that and his contributions to bringing that team up to speed. Think we might have got some clarity, Cal? Nope, not yet. We're working on sorting through how the wave by and how the pits opening will work out.
Well, the safety car has the overall leader, so there's no point in waving Parker Thompson by. You're going to put him on a further lap ahead. So they were a little bit unclear in terms of if they would do a class wave by. So if you've got anyone who's trapped there between the safety car and their class leader, certain championships allow those to get a wave by and get back onto the same lap, so you don't effectively lose 3 parts of a lap here by being caught behind the safety car. But that was at their discretion, I think, is how they called it.
As Brian Till said, his favorite word in the rule book is may. They may present that as an opportunity, but it is at their discretion, like Calvin says. Let's check in once again with Amanda here with 1 hour, 23 minutes to go.
Exactly that, and that's what Dan Hanley is looking at. He's like, there's just, you know, almost an hour and a half left in this race. What happened to us just could happen to our other competitors. There's no reason to give up now. It's a small little crew here that Hanley Motorsports has. I asked if they were getting help from the CrowdStrike team, as I see some of the teams are wearing some CrowdStrike fire suits. He's like, no, our guys just borrowed these for this.
Nice. Yeah, that is one of the things that some of these teams have had to do. They've had to either purchase or borrow some of the equipment that they usually do not use in Pirelli GT4 America for pit stop purposes.
Now we are seeing a class wave by here. This is a bit awkward.
Yep, it is
So
a little awkward.
I think they're going to have to wait to then open the pit lane. Yeah, so they are doing a class wave by here, so everyone's got that notification.
That means then the pit lane can open the next time around.
So what is happening here, if you've got your class leader behind you and you are behind the safety car somewhere in the pack, you effectively now get the wave by to go back around and join your class leader on their same lap. The overall leader stays in place because he's leading the race, he's leading his class and so forth. So this is great. This really helps out a lot, particularly it can turn a race upside down if you do get trapped, and could have been very much in the mix for a win. If you've just made a pit stop, suddenly you can be on the back foot by the timing of this safety car. But it just takes a little bit of time. It eats a lot of the clock, and it's a long lap here as well, of course, so all of this just adds up. But we should be seeing pit lane open next time by, and then I think we'll be seeing the top 3 cars in this race hit pit lane, and I believe ultimately Kevin Bohm should be leading us back to green.
That looks like the way it ought to sort out. Let's look amongst those then from Bohm on back that would appear to owe us pit stops. I believe Demi Chalkis would be one because she was the second driver in that car. So that would be one. Eversley as well. Mike Lamara started that car.
Filgueras is in, so they're good. JCD jumped out, so Filgueras is back in for his second stint of the day.
Word from race control is the pits will open this time by as long as the wave around cars have cleared the entry to the pit lane. And once that pit stop happens, we'll have a better sense for exactly where everyone sorts out. The challenge is not having some of these pit or stint lengths available.
You have to wait because those cars that got the wave by,
sure,
if you opened it then, they could dive
That's
in
right.
and get back out again, potentially at least, and have a huge advantage.
I think this is the car that needs to clear pit in. Yes, it is. And once it does so, then the official word will come down that the pits will open. So this is where it hurts the Thompsons and the Van Berlos and the McQuarries. Pitting under yellow with everyone bunched up, that will drop them to the back of the train behind those that were able to take advantage and pit just prior to the yellow. But, you know, still plenty of time to fight your way back in this race.
Deep field, though.
It is.
And it gets really awkward at times with being out of class, battling through the positions as well. So a lot of work for Daniel Hanley to try and navigate his way through, for example.
Right.
Along with Swearingen and James Walker Jr. James Walker Jr. promised the win. That win potentially has got a lot harder for the Bimmer World team.
Yeah, that's right. Third on the leaderboard, but owing a pit stop. Those top three definitely need to come in. So
really, track position is the main key element to these leaders having to hit pit stop right now, because all of the other cars sitting behind them are topped up, got their driver changes done, and they're going to roll out behind them. Here we go.
those that owe the pit stops make their way into the pits, and they will take them now behind the safety car and go to the back of the train. So that is the leader in both the Silver and Pro-Am classes that lead the train into the pit lane. They won't be the leader for much longer, though, because there goes the rest of the field by. Parker Thompson in the white Supra leads this train down the pit lane, and the Hanley Motorsports crew will start the tire change, the refueling, and most importantly, perhaps the driver change on that car. And it is a busy, busy pit lane with so many cars pitting under the full course yellow.
Yeah, you got to be so disciplined. You're kind of frustrated by the fact, the timing of the yellow and the fact you weren't on pit lane, so you feel you're on the back foot, but you just got to be really disciplined here with executing the pit stop, making sure you're not shy of that 90-second mark as well.
Van Berlo out, Swearingen in. Kurt Swearingen had a nice start to the day at GT America, powered by AWS, another podium run. Of course, everybody in that championship chasing Isaac Sherman in the GT4 ranks. He's perfect on the season. At the ACI Motorsports folks with a nice clean pit stop. There goes the Hanley car. These are the cars that got the class wave around coming by.
Yeah, you got to be careful here in case there's a red light at the end of pit lane.
That's right. And now you see a little bit of overlap as well between those three cars leaving the pits. And by rule, the car that's not in the fast lane, the car on the right-hand side of the screen, that's Swearingen in this case, has to give that position to these two cars that were alongside. So the two Supras make their way through, led by Dan Hanley now in the Hanley Motorsports car. Then we get to John Jesbray for Smooge. And then Kurt Swearingen cycles in behind that duo. They will now hustle to catch up to the back of the pack. Race control will look at the order, make sure everything has been resolved to their satisfaction, and then we should be able to turn them loose again here at Circuit of the Americas.
That all looked like the way it should have gone down to me. I don't see anyone who's really gained any huge advantage or circumvented the rules and protocol, so to speak.
This is the Skip Barber School team here.
Great experience for some of these teams. We talk about the ladder system and just learning different disciplines to have this opportunity to do an endurance race, go through the pit stop routine. It's exciting for these crews. Lots to be learned.
Well, and that's part of the deal here, right? To add the endurance racing element to Pirelli GT4 America, it's about teaching drivers that are new to it but aspire to get to longer distance races about the discipline, but it's equally true for the teams and crews. Teach them the nuances of these longer races with live pit stops.
I think the Kevin Boehm car is like third in line now, so I'm curious to see if they do a final wave by the Auto Technique car and the Flying Lizard machine.
Yeah, so what happened there is when the overall leaders peeled in, a couple of these cars that were trapped a lap down, these two in fact, that are out in front of Kevin Boehm, stayed out, and now they're effectively basically a lap down to the overall leader, but trapped behind the safety car. So we'll see. That's another one that we were told there may be a final wave by, there may not be. There is a chance that these lap cars could start the race, restart the race at the front. The cars cycle through. That gives us a chance to check the order here. Boehm and Filgaris, first and second in silver. Then we've got a couple of AM-class cars sitting third and fourth. They were able to use this pit stop sequence to their advantage. Nick Shandy now leads in the AM class ahead of Judson Holt. Gray Newell currently leading in the Pro-Am class, sitting in the fifth spot at the moment. Got a chance under yellow to hear from a couple of drivers. Let's do so now with Amanda.
Well, JCD jumped into the pits as he saw something on the track that led that to you, but you said that was luck on your side. What was it?
Yeah, absolutely. Came out of the carousel and I saw Super missing a wheel on the outside, immediately radioed in. I was going to react even if I didn't hear back, but luckily my box got back to me, told me to get in. We got in and the safety car came out. Typically that always gives you a little bit of track advantage from anyone that hasn't pitted. I don't want to say anything before I really know what's going on. Looked like a full post-race, but looks like Eric's sitting P2 right now. We don't really have the outright pace, but we know we got a great team and a great package in between both drivers, so we'll see if we can stay in the fight. But I know that Parker and Kenton are both going to put a lot of pace on the board here late race, so we'll see if the heat drops, because that'll definitely play into our favor. Maybe bring the fight back to us, and we'd like to see that because we'd love to be up there fighting for the win.
I was just about to say that. We can kind of see the sun going down, and we can almost even feel it in the air a little bit. Thank goodness. How much would that help when you look at the naturally aspirated Porsche versus the other BOPs out here?
Yeah, I mean, hard to quote exact numbers, but we're seeing almost a second loss in pace, right? And to use that pace, we also can't use AC inside the car, so we're suffering in two ways, not only the engine, but the driver as well. It's part of the game. Every car has its strengths, right? And so we just got to let that weather come back down and let our Porsche start getting back on the pace. And we know it has great brakes and it handles real well. We just need that track temp to drop.
True test of human and machine.
That's for sure, Amanda. Thank you very much. Great to hear from JCD, driver of the second place car overall. But if we look back at the fourth place car right here, it's actually third place car, fourth in line. It's the AM class leader, Chris Walsh and Nick Shanny. Really, really nice job from the Karas race team. Ahead of Judson Holt, Spec Racer Ford veteran in the SCCA categories. He's currently sitting there in the fourth spot overall, the sixth car in line. There is a lap car in between, but it's the bright yellow BMW coming through the shot, doing a really, really nice job with Denny Stripling as they make their debut here this weekend. It's definitely has shaken up the AM class. A lot of the contenders early now are sitting a little bit further back, with the likes of Rob Holland and Charlie Postins back in fourth and fifth. But the good news is we're about to turn them loose again, as the safety car has accelerated away and Kevin Boehm has the field in hand. He reported, by the way, during that yellow that temperatures in the cockpit have gotten up over 110 degrees It is a hot one, although the temperatures are starting to come down. We're about to restart this race with Kevin Boehm leading Eric Vilgaris, Nick Shanny, Judson Holt, and Gray Newell. Here's the run into the VP acceleration zone. The green flag waves, and we're back underway with an hour and 10 minutes still to go here at Circuit of the Americas.
Vilgaris looks to the inside, deep on the brakes on the Porsche. Boehm tries to set him, tries to do the crossover, can't quite make it work. And we see a lap car trying to get back on the lead lap.
That's Michael Cooper in the Black Dog Speed Shop Nissan that's lost several laps in the early going due to some misfortune, but that car started on the front row. We know it is awfully fast, but right now stuck behind the overall leaders. In the meantime, Shanny's got them bottled up behind him. Look at this freight train rolling through the S's.
Yeah, well, this is very similar to the start of the race where we got the AMs on board now, so there could be some shuffling, particularly with some teams taking advantage of that full course yellow and gaining some track position, so we should see a lot of action here during the first 5-10 minutes of this restart.
Let's keep an eye on some of those cars that had to pit under the yellow. They're out of position relative to their pace potential, one of which is entering the frame right here with Dan Hanley looking up the inside of Judson Holt and trying to recover from that misfortune. Got up on that big curve on the inside. That popped that white Super up into the air, up on two wheels for a time.
Yeah, just got to be super disciplined here. Show some patience. You got to cut through this field, try and get that track position back, but don't take any high risk when you got a fast race car like they have today. And
still over a traditional Pirelli GT4 America race distance. Still to go. That's a battle for position in the AM class. That's the two-time and defending champion car, James Clay and Charlie Postins, fighting side by side with the Rotec racing machine.
Yeah, that was really close there with Charlie Postins behind the wheel now of that 36 Bimmer World entry. Thought they were going to touch there. Good, hard, clean racing. Everyone getting back into a rhythm after a long safety car period.
This is the battle in the AM class right here. Nick Shanny leads the way in class. He's third overall. That's the red-nosed, primarily white BMW that came through the picture a moment ago. But then Paul Sparta right now fighting with Judson Holt. That is for position, the two BMWs. This is for position two. Postins lunges up the inside of Rob Holland, and he takes that spot away.
That was nicely done there. I was worried that the yellow BMW wasn't going to clear the apex by the time Charlie got it down in there, but he did a nice job of managing that.
Side by side here, Gray Newell under attack from Paul Sparta. Judson Holt also looking up the inside. Different classes mixing it up here. Gray Newell runs in the lead, though, in the Pro-Am class. Doing a really nice job. That Heart of Racing team used the strategy to their advantage. In the meantime, back at the front of the field, Vilgaris snookered Boehm on the start, but Kevin's got designs on taking that lead right back.
He certainly has. BMW's got a lot of pace there through the S's, but certainly it seems that things have cooled down a little bit on that Porsche, and Eric Vilgaris wanted the lead, wants to control. Maybe just get some clean air on the front end of that Porsche. That could aid his cause that we talked about JCD with in terms of the heat on that Porsche and taking some performance out of it.
Dan Hanley still on the recovery drive. Look at him in the back of the shot. Big move to the inside of Rob Holland. Yep, able to pull alongside. Rob saw him coming, gives him a wide berth. And it does look like Hanley will be able to move forward just that little bit more. Running roughly the same time difference behind the class lead as it was prior to the yellow, but the difference is he's got so many cars he's got to work through now to get back to the cars he's chasing in his class. And Holland actually was able to fend him off. In the meantime, Gray Newell, boy, he wants out of this AM class hornet's nest. They're playing through at the moment. Postins heaping the pressure onto the back of Judson Holt. This is a newcomer to the championship in the yellow BMW up against the two-time and defending series champion.
Tell you what, Paul Sparta is on the charge. He's having an amazing season, really taking a whole new level this year. Championship leader coming in. Really strong run here, making some moves early after this restart.
I totally agree. Paul Sparta and Chris Wilson have had a great start to this 2024 season, and Paul's driving has been a big part of that. Here we go, front of the field. The third car in line is a lap down. Don't need to worry about the Black Dog car, unfortunately, at this stage. It's just these two fighting for the lead in silver and overall, with Eric Vilgaris leading Kevin Boehm But for how much longer, that's the question. Bohm is closing in.
He is. Certainly seemed like the BMW's had the edge in pace over the Porsche earlier in this race, but as JCD said, starting to cool down a little bit. And they'll take anything right now to get that Porsche back into its sweet spot.
Dropping back a little bit to find the AM class leader. Well, for the moment, because Shanny has company just behind him, closing in, is the aforementioned Paul Sparta. Then it's Postins, then it's Holt. That's the top 4 in AM. They run 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th overall right now. Goes to show that, yeah, there's no difference between these cars. They're all GT4 spec. The only difference in the classes is driver experience.
Yeah, this is a great little battle here. Just great to see the improvement by Nick Shanny and Paul Sparta over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Really coming on gangbusters. Got to be so much fun now to be battling out for the lead in the class.
We were wondering about James. Oh, big problems here. Is that Cowden? It is.
JMF.
Tire rub, right side. Oh, and Gray Newell, this might be the other part of the equation. I was about to say, James Walker Jr. has driven to the lead in Pro-Am, having called his shot to Amanda Busick earlier. Cut down tire coming off of the car. That does end up off to the side of the track. Oh, this is tough to see. It's been a brutal day for Heart of Racing. Both cars have had their share of issues.
Yeah, one on pit lane got a note from the team that they said had an air jack failure when the Hannahs were doing their pit stop exchange, unfortunately dropping the car on the deck. So bit of a disaster, but nothing the team could do about it, just a technical failure with the equipment.
All right, what are we looking at here? It looks like that is Elevon Goulart defending against Rob Holland for position in AM. Lead in AM could be hanging in the balance before too much longer. Shanny in the white and red BMW, Paul Sparta in the green and white BMW. Postins coming through on a lapped car there. That's the OGH Motorsports car, not involved in this fight. And look at the big movers of the race. Nick Shanny, Paul Sparta, Charlie Postins, and yep, they run 1, 2, 3 in class.
Amazing, 23 spots gained. Here comes Paul Sparta for the lead down at the inside. BMW versus BMW. Shanny just tries to keep that outside lane and maintains the lead here as Sparta up and over the curb.
Yeah, did you see how vertical he got when he climbed over that curb at the apex? Unbelievable, but he gathered it back together, and he needs to quickly because here come the champs. They are reeling in this pair for the lead in the AM class.
BMW's 1, 2, 3 in the AM class. They're looking for the overall lead and the lead in silver with Kevin Bohm heaping the pressure on Phil Garris.
Oh, yeah. Bohm has closed in. Phil Garris got that great restart, just dove to the inside into turn 1 and took the lead away. But Bohm has been quick in this race. That BMW platform appears to be pretty strong around Circuit of the Americas. And we see a trio of BMWs fighting for the AM class lead right before our eyes. It's Shanny, Sparta, and Postins. 1, 2, 3, 3rd, 4th, and 5th on the road.
Yeah, Postins has the momentum right now. He's absolutely flying, trying to go side by side there with the Random Vandals machine down towards the turn 12 brake zone.
Here he comes to the inside of Paul Sparta. This looks like it should be relatively straightforward into the braking zone. Will Postins look for more? He thought about it, but does roll off that brake pedal, settling in right between the other two that had been top 2. Meanwhile, contact there. That was the 4th place car in class that got caught up with a lapped car. Boy, oh boy, that was the Fast Track Racing BMW of Judson Holt, who got tangled up, and that cost him some track position and maybe some damage.
Hanley's absolutely flying, has cut through this field very effectively as Bohm now heaping the pressure on once again on Phil Garris, but Hanley in the bright white Supra up to 7th overall. He's cut his way through this AM class battle.
That's the trouble. He's lost so much ground to these cars fighting through traffic. It's now 16.3 seconds behind these two, which are in the same class. Phil Garris sets that car defensively in the middle of the road, trying to force Bohm into a decision, and Bohm seemed like couldn't quite decide which would be the best way to approach trying to take the lead.
Yeah, but I just love the aggression. You could sense that Kevin Bohm wants the lead of this motor race. He's going to make it happen.
Right there with the tire tracks, using up all the curb through the high-speed S's at Circuit of the Americas. Porsche looks pretty stout through this part of the racetrack.
like Bohm likes to eat up a bit more of the curb. They're just straight lines a little bit more through the S's. And we see Poston's has gotten around Sparta there. Now got the pressure on Nick Shanny for the lead in AM.
Regardless of how this sorts itself out, Nick Shanny is absolutely holding his own against Charlie Poston's. That is not to be dismissed.
No, just rapid acceleration with his learning over the last couple of years, and so much fun to watch. Drivers who come into this championship with no experience, learning the ropes, and now they're suddenly battling for the lead. Poston's down to the inside. Shanny doesn't want to give it to him side by side. Charlie's not got a lot of acceleration run there.
That's awesome.
Hanley in the middle of this little AM battle.
For sure, that Supra continues to come back through the field. Now he'll sit and watch these two fight ahead of him. Meanwhile, Sparta looks like he wants to sweep around the outside. We've also got the Pro-Am leader in the picture. That's the red and black BMW right there, the number 82. Whoa, that was close behind.
Hanley there gets another overall position, gets inside Shanny. Now he's got Charlie Poston's right in front of him, and once he clears Poston's, he'll then got to give chase after Eric Filgueras and Kevin Bohm for the silver lead in this race.
That was a nice move from Sparta. Just rolled that speed to the inside of Shanny. It becomes the outside through this section of the track, and he's able to carry the speed around to grab second spot. So Paul Sparta around Shanny. Now Shanny under attack from Walker, not for class position, but James Walker Jr. comes through. Shanny comes back on him though. Awesome stuff. Hanley and Poston's, boy, that was close.
Really close there. Hanley has to just get on the brake and eat up some of that curb there to not have contact with Charlie Poston's.
And this is not for class position. There's no reason to throw your race away here, guys. Careful. Shanny and Walker, again, same message there, not for class position, and James Walker Jr. does make the pass stick that time. Now Shanny can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief because the car behind him, I do not believe he's for position. I think that car is a few laps down behind this battle.
Looking at the clock, we've been eating up at a rapid rate now. We're under an hour to go. Earliest point in the race that cars could hit pit lane would be 51 minutes and 30 seconds left in this race. That means that a car could come on pit lane, serve the 90-second minimum stop time, and have their final stint be at 50 minutes.
So that car squirming for Dan Hanley as he just asks for more and more and more performance. Under an hour to go. Oh, thought about a late lunge, decided against it. That was probably the prudent choice.
Yeah, I'm sure he's getting a little bit antsy here. He recognizes, like, I need to get to those two leaders. I need to close the gap to Filgueras and Bohm, or at least keep that gap stable until I turn it over to my teammate Parker Thompson.
He's now dropped 20 seconds behind the top two. That's what hurt him, right? Those two pitted before the yellow. He was unable to. And because he had to pit under yellow, dropped so much track position, it's taken this long to fight back through. Instead of, had he been able to pit on sequence with the other two, he would have been right there with them here on the restart. Instead, he still has one more out-of-class car to pass, and then an over 21-second deficit to try and overcome in only 57 minutes with which to do so.
Yeah, a few of those drivers that got caught out there have done a really nice job. James Walker Jr., remember Macquarie was trapped as well. Certainly the 7 car with Kai Van Berlo. Kurt Swearingen now sits, what's that, 3rd in Pro-Am. James Walker Jr. now leads Pro-Am, so they're recovered nicely. Down to the inside, he needs to force it right now. He's got to clear Charlie and get on the road.
And manages to do just that, and that actually leaves Charlie a bit vulnerable. Sparta rolls a ton of speed through turn number 20. Looks like perhaps Hanley's a little bit vulnerable here in the straight line for the counterattack, and Poston's will mount that counterattack. Back to the outside he goes, side by side into turn 1. Finally, Poston steps back in line. He knows that's not his fight, that's not his battle. His concern is that green car that has suddenly appeared right behind him.
And right behind him sits our Pro-Am leader, James Walker Jr. He made a promise he was going to win this one for his daughter, who's probably walking through the graduation process right about now, I think.
That's right. Congratulations to the family, of course, but what a day this could be for James Walker Jr. And cool to see, if we're looking at that Pro-Am class, like Lamara, sitting right there in 9th overall, 2nd in class. He and Ryan Eversley have put together a quiet, solid day that could be very, very special and end up on the podium.
Yeah, it could be a really good shootout when you get Macquarie back behind the wheel at the Bimmer World entry, Ryan Eversley up on the wheel, and then Kai Van Berlo. That could be some feisty stuff here for the win tonight.
Just a snapshot of the soundtrack of GT4 racing coming down the backstretch. So many cool cars, great brands, aspirational brands involved in this series. Cars that are very, very much based on those you could buy in the showroom. It's no wonder sports car racing is going through a renaissance right now with so many manufacturers involved, showcasing their products' performance on the racetrack, including right here in Pirelli GT4 America.
Well, I think it's the real sweet spot for customer racing in terms of the budgets that it takes to run a GT4 car compared to GT3. You can also share that expense with a co-driver if you are paying for your ride. So, and the cars are fun. I mean, we can see how much fun we're seeing out there this afternoon. Cars can run side by side through many of the corners here. They're not as aero-dependent as a GT3 car. They're not as sophisticated to run from a team's perspective. So I think it ticks a lot of the boxes.
Certainly, it does appear that way. Grids are massive around the globe, here in the States, over in Europe, in Australia, in Asia. A lot of places you could run these GT4 cars.
Holland there starting to make some moves.
Yeah, he's staring at a podium out the windscreen if he can get to Judson Holt. Talked a little bit about Holt and Denny Stripling, his co-driver. Great to have fast track racing back in the paddock here this weekend. That's the yellow BMW that's coming through. These are two guys that know each other really, really well from SCCA club racing. Denny Stripling, something of a legend in the Spec Racer Ford community. He's the driver coach for Judson Holt. Stripling's been there or thereabouts in the SCCA National Championship runoffs many, many times in a variety of classes, but probably best known for SRF. It's not for position there. That's Walker and Sparta, but that's an AM car and a Pro-Am car. In the meantime, how about this? Eric Filgaris has actually been able to leg out a lead for the first time. You know what? We heard in that interview with JCD, he was talking about we needed to cool off when the temperatures come down. We think our car is going to come to life. We might be seeing that happening before our eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a few degrees makes an enormous difference on these race cars. As we said before, they're production based, so a lot of the safety elements of the cars kick in if you start to get close to those thresholds that have been preset. So JCD expected that the race may come to them a little bit, and it's certainly showcasing itself here in this stint. But when we get the final drivers behind the wheel, Kenton Cook going up against JCD, Parker Thompson behind the wheel. Daniel Henley has now got that Toyota Supra up into P3, but he's 23 seconds back. So that's going to be a tall order for Parker Thompson, even with his skills, to chase them down unless they see a yellow and compress this field once again this afternoon.
Let's talk some strategy here, Calvin, because the vast majority of the leaders now basically are on the same strategy because of the yellow and either taking service just before it or during it. Side-by-side battle further back here. It's three Supras that have found each other. But we're closing in on 50 minutes to go. And the maximum stint length is 50 minutes. So could we see some people come in here pretty soon and cover themselves from that eventuality of a full course yellow that we saw?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think at 50 minutes to go, if you're an AM driver, if you've got a co-driver who's a little bit quicker than you want to get him in the car as soon as you can, maximize that stint length. So we're right at that point because there's a 50-minute stint. You got a 90-second pit lane delta. So at 51:30, right about now, you could hit pit lane, sit on pit lane for 90 seconds, get your co-driver back out there, and then you can also gain that advantage that we saw some of the teams get by pitting if we should see a yellow as well. So you tick both of those boxes.
I think we got an update from the pits. Let's go down to, nope, we will not. We'll hold on to that. I think they were expecting a pit stop soon, is now what I gather. And we will check in with Amanda when that happens. So I think there are some teams thinking along those lines strategically.
More likely to happen with the Pro-Am driver lineups in terms of you would have started your AM, so you got your slower, your 2 drivers on board right now. Get them out, get the fast driver back behind the wheel, and then in terms of strategy for a silver lineup like you have here with JCD and Eric Filgueras, it's then about, do you want to protect yourself against a yellow coming out and being caught out like we saw some of the leaders earlier in this race. There's your answer.
Yeah, I think that is the smart play here to make sure that a full course yellow doesn't ruin your day, because while Hanley could recover from the previous one, there will be necessarily less time left to recover should a yellow come out again. So anyway, you see the car in the pit lane. You'll notice there's more than 50 minutes remaining, but they're all right because the time spent in transit does not count against the stint length.
And let's think about the overcut here. Let's see what this team does. If they elect to keep Kevin Boehm out there, his car's in the sweet spot, he's got no traffic in front of him, it is hammer time for this driver right now. If they elect to pit him on this next lap, this is such an important in lap for Kevin Boehm. He doesn't want any traffic. He wants a monster lap that will then compare with Eric Filgueras' teammate JCD's out lap. They may be able to leapfrog to the lead here.
Fast Track Racing comes to the pits. We see Karis Kallis in the pits. We see Bimmerworld with both of their cars in the pits from their respective class leads, no less. But they are in. They're getting that service done at the first opportunity and covering themselves against the potential of a full course yellow. Reshuffling the deck once again. Looks like a pretty clean stop there from RS1. Driver change complete. There's Kenton Cook. He's getting ready to hop back aboard for Random Vandals. So this looks like that push-in lap that Calvin talked about for Kevin Boehm. Crucial lap here, and we'll have to check these times as well on the pit stops. That will make a big difference, too, for the RS1 team. It was right on the money.
90.8, yeah, it's a good one.
Wow.
No penalty there, nice clean stop, didn't waste too much time. 8/10 is the margin that the Random Vandals team could certainly eat into a little bit, but it's all about that in-lap here for Kevin Boehm if he elects to hit pit lane.
And by the look of readiness from Kenton Cook, you'd have to believe it was imminent.
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer at this point. You'd want to bring him in. He's had a good clean lap, no traffic in front of him. Ideal scenario, but they've still got to execute the pit stop to leapfrog around.
Same story for their AM class car. Paul Sparta will be handing it over to Chris Wilson, who we got a shot of just a moment ago. In comes Kevin Boehm from the lead of the race with 48 minutes to go.
This is what is known as the overcut, where you stay at one extra lap. Now, there's fresh tires going on during these pit stops, unlike normal Pirelli GT4 races, but the temperatures here, I mean, those tires are getting up to temp and up to speed pretty quickly, but again, a hot in lap should beat even a warm conditioned out lap for JCD. Let's see how it plays out.
Amanda's got a bird's eye view of the pit stop for Random Vandals Racing. Amanda, let's go down to you.
Yeah, he's about to come in too. They are in the last pit stall here at COTA, so they will have a nice exit once this thing is over. You'll see Kevin Boehm hop out of that BMW. Kenton Cook getting ready for this final stint of this Lonestar Enduro. In talking to the team, they've been pretty happy with how these pit stops have gone so far today. Said a few mishaps, but we just have to keep our head down and go forward. But this last one about the execution, you guys are talking about the overcut. This has to be a perfect stop if they are going to compete with that 28 Porsche for this final leg in this Enduro right here in Austin.
Couple of stops that we can report on that were a little on the slow side. Both Bimmerworld cars were multiple seconds over the minimum. 3 seconds in terms of the AM car, 6 seconds for the Pro-Am car that was leading handily in class. That's the only good news for them. This is for the lead effectively. Here comes RS1. Here comes this Porsche out of the final corner. Boehm has been released. Will the overcut work? Oh, it's going to be tight coming up the hill, and keep in mind the Porsche's going to be on warm tires. Look at them as they come back together again in turn 1. For now, advantage to Random Vandals.
Yeah, the overcutters work, but right now JCD is going to have the hammer down. He's got to take advantage of these tires that are up to temperature right now. He's got a lap underneath them versus Kenton Cook. It's going to be a ragged opening lap here for Kenton Cook to try and hang on to this race lead.
Pit stop for Random Vandals right where they want it, just over a minute and 30 seconds. That's the minimum. Here comes this Porsche. Here we go. John Capestre-Dubet's closing in. He's got the hot tires. He's on the attack. This could be for the race win.
Watch for turn 11. Watch for that brake zone. He's got to set him up here. He needs to really get through this corner effectively. And you got to feel that Kenton Cook are going to try and protect here down into the brake zone.
Cook pretty strong on the run down into the brake zone, a little bit on the defensive side. Pick a line, Kenton. Looking around the outside. Here's JCD now.
Oh, he got stymied there right at apex. Didn't quite time it.
He does pull alongside, though. It's not over just yet. This is that long drag race from turn 11 to turn number 12. Great passing opportunity, and look at the Porsche looking stronger than it has at any point in the race so far. The two edging just that much closer to one another into the brake zone for the lead of the race. Capestre-Dubet and Cook side by side.
Not sure if there's any rub there, any argy-bargy, but JCD has got the outside line now. Kenton Cook comes back at him. Maintains the lead there for Random Vandals. What a battle we're seeing between the BMW and the Porsche.
They know what's at stake, and these two have sparred before in previous seasons in this championship. Great respect between the two. Kenton Cook in the BMW, John Capestre-Dubet's in the Porsche, but are those BMW's tires up to temp? Has he fended off the challenge?
I think he's done enough. He's going to start to get in his sweet spot right now with the temperatures, what we got right now, ambient and track. Kenton Cooks are going to get in his sweet spot, and now he's starting to find that rhythm immediately.
Again, this doesn't show as for the lead on the leaderboard. A number of teams still owe some pit stops, but as it should cycle through, we anticipate this to be the battle for the lead of this race. Right now, Dan Hanley shown as the leader, Mike Lamara second, and the leader in Pro-Am. Rob Holland third, the leader in Am. There's Kenton Cook. You can see the exhaustion on his face. That was a long day at the office.
Yeah, it was a great in-lap. He knew what he had to do. Once that Porsche pitted, that was hammer time. Had a clear racetrack, got the job done, gets that track position, but then that was up to his teammate to hang on to that lead. I thought JCD was going to do it on the run out of turn 12, but he couldn't quite get the nose in front of the Porsche. Good, respectable racing there.
And it was great pit work as well by Random Vandals to help secure it. This was the run down to turn number 12. Look how close these two were. Don't think they ever touched, but you couldn't get much closer than that.
No, right here looked really close there. Was there a little rub? Possibly. But Kenton just gets the hammer down. You can use a little bit of that runoff room there on the exit of turn 12 and then maintains the inside line for the upcoming corner. Beautiful job there. Both drivers right on the edge.
Wow. Apologies, I misidentified. Of course, it was Kevin Bowen we were looking at. Kenton Cook is behind the wheel and doing a tremendous job. Exactly what was expected of him. Tough circumstances there to go out on the cold tires with a hard-charging competitor behind you, but he answered the bell.
Seeing some of the other drivers and teams now hitting pit lane. 34 car, I think, just served a drive-through. Let's try and identify exactly what happened here.
Boy, that 17 car's been in the wars today. Sam Owen driving at the time of the contact.
It's been a tough few races there for Sean Gibbons and Sam Owen, so not getting the rub of the draw lately.
Mike Lamara has cycled through to the lead of the race. Precision Racing LA is the team. He and Ryan Eversley share that car. Can you help define the strategy here, Cal? Running long, risking the yellow, but presumably with some clear racetrack, maybe trying the ultimate overcut.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'd have to feel with the experience level that Eversley will be a little bit quicker when he jumps on board, so I don't know why you wouldn't want to get him out behind the wheel here early in his stint and try and maximize that. Lamara's last lap was a 2:28, so I'm not sure if there was traffic involved in that.
Or perhaps he's in the pits as we speak.
That would make more sense.
That could be. that could be the story. So we'll keep an eye on that. Looks like that is the case, because now on timing and scoring, as you see, Kenton Cook has cycled through to the lead of the race, as expected. John Capestre-Dubets sits in the second spot, some 2 seconds behind. He took his shot, Calvin, and it looked like maybe that Porsche had the ponies to pull alongside the BMW. But great driving between the two. Kenton Cook held off JCD.
Yeah, and let's not forget they run 1-2 in the championship chase right now. So JCD and Phil Guerras came in with 72 points on the board. Bowman Cook right behind them at 63. So this is a big swing here today. It's double points. It's normally a 7-point margin. It's going to be 14-point margin between first and second. So that could suddenly leapfrog them ahead of the 28 car by the end of the day.
Let's update the other classes too. James Clay, Charlie Poston's still leading in the AM class. And their team car, Tyler McQuarrie, leading right now in Pro-Am. Remember, Tyler's co-driver, James Walker Jr., called his shot earlier. He promised to win for his daughter Shelby, who is set to take a walk on the graduation stage in 11 minutes from now. Very proud dad, and I have to assume proud daughter too, with dad doing a tremendous job here today with a hefty lead in that Pro-Am class. Now that Precision Racing LA has made their stop, Ryan Eversley has come back out 9th overall. We'll have slightly fresher tires now to go the distance. We'll see what kind of ground Ryan can make, but even without a race win, this would be a good day for that team, and Ryan Eversley in particular, first weekend racing alongside the new co-driver.
Yeah, you can see him second in the class right now, but he's going to get the hammer down, see if he can chase after Van Berlo. Parker Thompson's now behind the wheel of the Hanley Motorsports Toyota Racing Supra. Curious to see if Chris Wilson can chase after James Clay. It could be a huge day for Random Vandals. They lead overall in silver as well, and they run second in the AM class. What does Chris Wilson have up his sleeve to chase down James Clay for the lead?
Yeah. It could be a case of double wins for Bimmer World. That's how they run right now, with Clay leading in AM, McQuarrie leading in Pro-Am. As you look at Race Vision powered by AWS, the progress made by this car since the start of the race. They were down as far as 26th and now find themselves leading the class and sitting 5th on the road overall. Chris Wilson moving pretty quick, just set that car's fastest race lap. So even though Clay also had his car's fastest lap, Wilson was over a second faster that time.
I think this is going to be a battle by the end. I think Wilson seems to be displaying a little bit more pace at this stage of the race at least, and plenty enough time on the board here still to chase down that Bimmer World car for the lead in AM.
But there is a Bimmer World car in between that can play rear gunner out of class, let's remember, with McQuarrie. And he's got the boss man in front of him leading in the AM class. That's team owner James Clay. Maybe he does fight a little rear guard action, help the team out, perhaps with the charging Random Vandals car in the rearview mirror right now.
Possibly, but he knows that if you give Ryan Eversley a sniff sitting second in Pro-Am, you can't afford to let that gap go down just by playing the protective role for your team boss, admittedly in a separate class. So lots to play out here. It's going to be a good battle in all of the classes here, I feel, before the checker.
And adding to the list of variables, the sun is clearly starting to go down. This race will be over before sunset, of course, but temperatures are starting to plummet. Got an update from Amanda a few minutes ago that she said temperatures are notably and noticeably cooler here this evening. That's, of course, going to change the handling dynamics of all of these race cars. Cars that maybe were set up to run well in the heat of the day may struggle, and vice versa.
Yeah, and here we see Clay leading AM, leading Tyler McQuarrie, who's the leader in Pro-Am, and the car behind them, the green car, is the one of Chris Wilson that's given chase on James Clay, our AM leader. Last time across the stripe, he had about a 1.5 seconds advantage that lap, 1.2 seconds. That gap is coming down in a hurry for the AM lead.
Looking a little bit further back, picking up some other battles. Chris Walsh doing a really nice job for Karis Callis race team. And we get to this car, Ryan Eversley, that we've been talking about, second in the Pro-Am class. And Ryan's starting to charge a little bit here. Just ran a 2:17.6. McQuarrie, though, at a 2:16.2. That's shaping up very nicely for McQuarrie, but he has caught the team leader. And now this is where it gets interesting. Team cars, not in the same class, but with their own respective priorities that they need to balance here.
Yeah, McQuarrie's going to slide it down to the inside here. I think James Clay just needs to let him go, try and tuck in, try and pick up the draft here. Don't waste time. They're kind of trying to coexist here. That's not great execution through turn 11, and Wilson's coming in a hurry right behind them.
And quite frankly, that was not super well orchestrated. I think both cars lost time, and the winner here might be Chris Wilson, because he's closer than he has been at any point in this final stint, with 35 minutes and 30 seconds still to go.
Yeah, they tried to be too kind to one another, and that's allowed Wilson to carve another second out of that gap there. What a season they are putting together. Paul Sparta, Chris Wilson have the championship lead. Got a win under their belt already. 3 runner-up finishes. Keep talking about how important this race victory is. Double points. You get a 14-point margin on someone here today. That is massive at this stage of the season.
Oh, without a doubt. Here's a penalty to keep in mind. Car 28, that is the second place car on the road. John Capestre Dubets, a 5-second penalty. It says at next pit stop, but that's almost certainly going to be added at the end of the race for a pit lane procedure violation. So that makes it just that little bit easier for Parker Thompson. He's 27 seconds behind, but that's effectively 22 when you factor in that penalty. But I'm not sure, even though he is quicker right now by about a second a lap, it's going to be close on time.
Yeah, you're probably looking at about 15 laps to go, something in that sort of range. Right now, Parker's running lap times over a second faster. Yeah, it's going to be a tall order to catch JCD. He's probably just got enough in hand, even with that 5-second penalty that he's got to serve, because right now that gap is currently at 27.2 seconds. So going to be a tall order for Parker Thompson, and they could have had such a great run, potentially a win here this afternoon without that timing of the full course yellow and not getting into pit lane soon enough.
All of that, of course, is assuming there's not another full course yellow, at which point that 5-second penalty becomes a lot more punitive.
Oh, it's massive. When you get a post-race penalty, you think, oh, it's okay, rather than serving it during the race. But if there's suddenly a full course yellow, there's a full compression of the field, you could be 20 seconds in front like you are right now. It has no effect on your outcome in the race, your overall position. But suddenly, if there's a compression of the field, 5 seconds could be 3, 4, 5 positions at the end of the day, so it's massive.
It looks unlikely to be a factor, though, in this case, because there aren't any other silver class cars anywhere close. Maybe under full course yellow, it could cost them a position or two, but anyway, we're talking in hypotheticals at this point, because we are clean and green, just the one full course yellow so far.
The battle for the AM lead isn't hypothetical. It is right there, right in front of you.
There you go. Chris Wilson has caught James Clay and needs no second invitation. Wilson up the inside and puts the door to the side of James Clay. In so doing, grabs the lead away here with 32 minutes to go.
Yeah, there's going to be no steward's decision on that one little rub there, going for the lead. I think he had the position, had established himself to the inside. James tried to turn in there, his little argy-bargy, but no big deal.
Even still, this is a good day brewing for James Clay and Charlie Poston. They're used to winning these races, of course, but the way this season has started, just getting decent points is a big deal. We look in at Zach Anderson here, and this is one I'm not totally sure about what happened, because this was a car that was factoring in towards the front. If you remember, Colin Garrett in the early going was running at the pointy end, but Zach Anderson now, despite having the CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race, finds himself all the way down in 13th overall.
Well, remember, they had that brake issue. They lost a ton of time early in the race after their first round of pit stops. They had to come back down pit lane.
Did that full course yellow bring them back at all?
Not quite sure if they gained a lap, one of their laps back, but they had a healthy delay on pit lane sorting out that brake fluid issue.
Yeah, they are still No, they are on the lead lap again. So, it's one to keep an eye on, although the next target in class is Parker Thompson, who's quite a ways up the road. In any event, Chris Wilson with what might have been the winning move just a few moments ago to take the lead in AM. And V-Brick sponsored Random Vandals racing car doing a great job. This is again Zach Anderson, who continues to fling that car around. There is what we were talking about. This car has led, as you could see.
Question of what might have been. I mean, their fast lap of the race is the fastest time of the day, and it's about 9 tenths quicker than our leader right now. So they had the pace in that race car to go for victory.
Than our leader's best lap, yes. Yeah, and even more so than, you know, what they're currently running. Of course, Anderson, too, has had his pace drop off with the tire degradation. Yeah, what a remarkable lap, though, into the 2:14s. Well, tough day in the office, it would appear, for the Auto Technic stable, because I think the other car also had some misfortune. It's been a bit of a hectic race, quite frankly. It's hard to remember exactly what happened to whom and when. But what we do know is this team has executed, and in talking to Kevin Boehm, Kenton Cook before the race, they were adamant what it was going to take to win today. It wasn't going to simply be about pace. It was going to be about execution. It was going to be about managing traffic, especially at the start with some out-of-position cars based on starting driver nominations, and then not making mistakes in the pits. And they have absolutely embodied that over the course of the day today.
Yeah, and BMW's just been so strong here this weekend. I think they lead all three classes, don't they, right now? So
Yep.
they're on a roll right now. It's horses for courses. I mean, there'll be some circuits that you go to and you just don't have that advantage. Porsches will be strong, but I think the heat is what hurt the Porsche. I think this is a great racetrack for the Porsche, but just the extreme heat that we're enduring here on race day has really throttled them back a little bit.
I do think, though, that it wasn't a done deal that simply running a BMW was going to put you at the front. I mean, look at the pace we've seen from Parker Thompson and Dan Handley at various times. They were caught out by the yellow, but without that, they could have been in the mix with the BMW and the Porsche. I mean, Ryan Eversley going really quick right now, another Supra that is showing the strength of that platform. So there were at least 3 makes, I think, that had a really solid case to be made as among the strongest here this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Eversley is digging deep. He's not quite as quick as our leader, Tyler Macquarie there, but he's having to dig deep because Kai Van Berlo is not that far behind, about 5 seconds back, and Kai is running really fast lap time. So for Eversley to hang on to P2, he's got to get the hammer down. He just set his fastest lap of the race.
One note from the Random Vandals team, evidently in Kevin Boehm's second stint, they were dealing with a tire pressure issue at one point. They just had to manage that until they could get in the pit window. So credit to them for managing their problems as well as they did, and they find themselves in position perhaps for a double win, both in the silver class and in the AM class. 27 minutes to go. Let's get more from the pits with Amanda.
Yeah, Ryan, just to add on that just a little bit, I had talked to Michael Cooper just a bit ago, and he said that it's the worst he's ever seen as a driver in terms of the marbles. He said specifically in turn 1, and I've heard other drivers talking about in the carousel area, and just various points as well. It's making it really tricky and having to change the line as we round out these final minutes. But just quickly on Eric Figalis and the 28 team, I talked to him about what that pit stop violation was for the 5-second hold. He said that they were told by the official that they were still fueling as they dropped the car.
Appreciate that. Looks like that penalty unlikely to affect the outcome of this race, at least as they run, but let's keep that in the back of our minds in case something changes late in the going. This is Eversley. He's just made the pass of Stripling, not for class position, but up another spot overall, and boy, it's going to take some getting used to, talking about Ryan Eversley in a Toyota.
I know. So many years associated with the Honda brand and Acura. So he's made the move. I think he's happy. He and Mario Biondo, who he's basically employed by as they got a wonderful relationship, and I think it's going to be a happy few years ahead for Ryan Eversley with that whole group.
Saw Mario racing in TC America earlier today. Of course, the team owner of this Precision Racing LA team. It's also the LA Honda World team when we're talking about some of their other racing programs.
There you see the gap there, Kai Van Berlo accelerating off in that green and white Porsche there, Eversley leading that pack down this back straightaway. So that's the gap. Eversley continues to set new fast race laps for himself, but again, Van Berlo is just a few tenths quicker, and he's got enough time at this pace and this delta in times to maybe get to Ryan Eversley's tail before the end of this race. He's going to keep digging deep. This could be a sensational battle for P2. Meanwhile, Macquarie still looks comfortable up front in the Pro-Am class.
That was Van Berlo passing Roman DeAngelis, who is very much delayed, down at 18th overall. But actually, given the issues in the Pro-Am class, it's not going to be a terrible result, all things considered, for himself and for Gray Newell. What are they? Fourth? I think they're fourth in Pro-Am right now. Given their struggles, could be a whole lot worse. But you're right, Van Berlo certainly is closing in. Eversley's got Stripling looking awfully racy behind him. He'll want to keep that buffer as long as he can.
Yeah, Stripling's been really impressive for fast track racing here. On track for that group based here in Texas, so great to see them back here racing again. And Stripling's been super impressive here, keeping the pressure on Ryan Eversley, admittedly not for a class position, but you know, if Eversley's having to really think about his lines into these corners, that's going to compromise his lap times a little bit, because Van Berlo took a second out of that gap on that last lap alone. He is coming in a hurry.
To your point on Stripling quickly, this is a home race for him. He's from McKinney, Texas. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of experience in Spec Racer Ford, has done some NLS racing over at the Nürburgring as well. Finished second in the runoffs a lot in Spec Racer Ford. 2019, 2015 were runner-up finishes. I guess I exaggerate slightly. It was 2, but that is kind of the reputation, unfortunately. One of the very best in a super competitive class. You show up at the runoffs and you'll see 40, 50 Spec Racer Fords, if not more, depending on the venue. So to have any success there is saying something. But he did win a SCCA Majors Nationwide Championship in Spec Racer Ford back in 2019, accruing points over the course of a season. Paired, of course, with Judson Holt here this weekend.
Great visuals here as the sun is starting to set a little bit. Race cars look so cool in this light. Kai Van Berlo over there just continues to keep the hammer down, chasing after Ryan Eversley there for P2 in the Pro-Am division.
23 minutes to go. Kenton Cook continues to lead. It's now 14 seconds over John Capestro Dubets and RS1. Parker Thompson continues to chip away, but it's still 22 seconds that he needs to overcome. Well, really 17 actually, when you factor in the penalty that's coming the way of the 28 car post-race. Tyler McQuarrie runs 4th, leads in the Pro-Am class. Then it's the Am class leader, Chris Wilson, who's built a 4-second gap over James Clay. Chris Walsh giving that car a great run. He and Nick Shanny could be in for a great result, finishing 3rd, at least as they run right now, and 7th overall.
Chris Walsh has got the magic sauce this year, hasn't he?
No kidding.
5 victories in TCX, unbeaten on the championship season.
And an awesome story, too. He's an active duty member of the Air Force, but has a fascinating background. Was a college athlete, played college football at Valparaiso University in Indiana, and actually was involved in the national bobsled team for a while, pursued his career in the Air Force, which, as I mentioned, is ongoing, but always had a love of racing. Actually grew up a Ralph Schumacher fan, and first got involved in the sport like so many did through esports and sim racing. We saw him jump into a race car for real, at least at the pro level, for the first time a handful of years ago. We've seen him in touring cars, we've seen him in GT4, and right now He's the dominant driver, as Calvin mentioned, in TCX this year, but showing how good he can be in a GT4 car too, currently 7th overall. But as we talk about that, this is tightening up quickly, Cal. Great eye a few laps ago to notice just how fast Kai Van Berlo is closing in. Both he and Eversley are doing their best laps each and every passing lap. Eversley at 2:16.9, that car's fastest lap the last time by. And Van Berlo 5/10ths quicker with a 2:16.3.
Yeah, Eversley's got to be thinking, what do I need to do? He's looking at his own lap times and just seeing he's improving every single lap. But you can see Kai Van Berlo now in his rearview mirror closing in on that position on the road. So he's got a battle on his hands. We've still got some time on the clock, over 21 minutes to go here.
This is going to be interesting because they, as a group, are catching Chris Walsh. And Denny Stripling, who is behind Eversley, needs to catch Walsh for 3rd in the AM class. So that's a podium position up for grabs. And also, at the back of this train is Zach Anderson, and he's actually faster than anybody on track right now. He's been running 2:15s when everyone else is 2:16 or above. So, boy, we could have a really fascinating finish here with just over 20 minutes left.
Yeah, big compression of these cars is going to evolve here over the next few laps.
This is the car that I mentioned is faster than anyone at the moment. Another 2:15 as Anderson continues to pour it on. Unfortunately, it might be in vain because the next car in his class is Parker Thompson, all the way up in 3rd overall. But Van Berlo continuing to make a name for himself here in North America. Dutch by extraction, calls Miami, Florida home now. And certainly one of the talented up-and-comers in the Porsche pyramid.
Yeah, super successful. Ton of race wins to his name already. Really likable young man. Spent some time with him when we were at Sebring. Had a nice chat with him there, and yeah, he's a top Porsche driver. I'm sure Porsche have their eye on him for bigger and better things down the road with some of their factory programs, but right now his only thought is, how do I catch Ryan Eversley and wrestle that top 2 position away from him? And he's getting ever closer. You can see there, Eversley will see him there.
Step 1 is to get past Stripling, but Stripling won't be too keen on the idea because he can see Chris Walsh coming ever closer out in front, and that is for a position within his class. And again, keep an eye on that BMW lurking in the background. It's the fastest of this group of 5. And Berlo trying to size up the Denny Stripling machine, crosses him over nicely, gets in position to where Stripling might just have to relinquish the position.
That was nice.
Yes, it was.
Beautiful job there by Kai Van Berlo, sliding it down to the inside. Now he's hoping that Eversley gets caught up a little bit with Chris Walsh here.
And then it's Anderson. How much will he want to intervene in this battle when really he has very little to gain and so much to lose, running 4th right now, but quite a ways adrift of the rest of the silver class front runners.
Yeah, top 4 came into this championship round 3rd in the points. So, but we talk about it's a double point reward here at the end of the day. So he's got a ton of cars between he and Parker Thompson, who sits in P3, but the car is absolutely flying. Zach Anderson, considering running mid-15s lap after lap, fastest lap of the race at 2:14.9, amazing pace.
Eversley does seem to be stuck a little bit here behind the 3rd place AM car, Chris Walsh. Eversley really needs to make quick work of him if at all possible because Kai Van Berlo has arrived on the scene. This is for 2nd and 3rd in Pro-Am. The gray and black Supra up against the green and white Porsche, and Eversley's got to go now. He does throw it up the inside. Can Van Berlo follow him through? It doesn't look like he's close enough, at least not yet.
Beautifully set up there by Ryan Eversley through the 2 preceding corners down into that brake zone, but Kai Van Berlo is now getting the ground. Chris Walsh, he's going to pick up the draft here a little bit on Ryan Eversley. It's going to be a battle by the time they get to the brake zone down into turn 12.
Van Berlo is through on Walsh. He's looking to the inside of Eversley. How late on the brakes will he be? Very late. That's the answer. Up the inside he goes, and he grabs the second spot away. Walsh fighting back to the inside. He needs to do as much as he can to try and hang on, because he's going to be challenged for the final step of the podium in AM before too much longer. In the meantime, a track limits final warning has been issued to Kai Van Berlo, so that's something to keep an eye on too.
Yeah, I think the next one is going to be a 3-second post-race penalty, so he's got to be careful here or gap Eversley by that amount. And they continue to add up. It's 3 seconds for the next one. It'll be another 5 if you do a repeated offense. There's no pit stop where you can give it back. It'll be all post-race. Eversley there tried to do the crossover in turn 12, but Chris Walsh had already filled that lane. He had nowhere to go with it. And here's Zach Anderson down to the inside there on Stripling.
He just throws it in there, grabs the spot away. That now temporarily separates Stripling from third in class, Chris Walsh. But Walsh soon will have to deal with the hard-charging Zach Anderson, who finds himself now up into the top 10 overall once again.
Incredible drive. Such a shame they had that brake issue earlier in the race. He and Colin Garrett had a great run going here today. It'll be a top 4 finish, but they're going to lose a bundle of points at the same time.
Here he comes, Anderson. Thinks better of it.
Great learning opportunity for Chris Walsh as well. You know, he's dominating in single driver series in TC America, leading the TCX championship, but battling out here with some of the top level drivers is certainly a great learning experience for him.
No question about it, and he's surrounded by some excellent GT4 drivers. Kai Van Berlo, Ryan Eversley, and then Zach Anderson right there too. Anderson looking.
He's just on a mission. He's just got his head down, just carving through this field. Has to be fun, but frustrating at the same time.
I'd love this just that little bit more, of course, if these were for class position instead of just overall. Looks like 4th is the best they can hope for without some misfortune for the front runners. But again, given their setbacks early in the race, Anderson and Garrett, all in all, relatively fortunate to come away with potentially 4th place points here in the next 14 minutes and change.
Eversley just lets him go. He said, I don't want no part of that.
Yep.
Go do your thing. Have fun.
Although he goes wide, might hold Eversley up just that little bit. Behind them, this is the battle for 3rd in AM. Walsh in the Car Guru's machine. He's got the spot, and closing in is Stripling looking to the inside. Walsh tries to pinch him down, and he manages to fend him off with that maneuver.
Yeah, tough to make a move there into 19. Really need to coexist there and give each other a little bit of room, otherwise someone's going for a big ride.
Talk about Denny Stripling. He's relatively new to this GT4 car, but he's got a racing resume that goes all the way back to 1994 at the club level, if not before. That's as far as I could find, at least. You see Lupe Tortilla on the side of that car, and that is the family business of his co-driver, Judson Holt. It's a restaurant you could find all around these parts. Proudly flying that flag this weekend with a hometown team of sorts in fast track racing based here in Texas.
Mexican food and a margarita sounds good about now, Ron. It's been a long day.
Indeed. 13 more minutes, though. Under a quarter of an hour remaining in the first ever endurance race in the history of Pirelli GT4 America.
It's been a good show. Had a couple, I mean, you think about the incidents, it's really just technical issues. You had a wheel come off, the smooth racing machine, and BMW going slow at the side of the racetrack. But in terms of the racing, it's been so clean this year. Really a wonderful year of racing to this point. There's just so much more respect this year between the drivers. They're giving each other a little bit of breathing room. It's not so cut and thrust, not so desperate, and that makes it a fun show.
Oh boy, here we go. That is Stripling and Walsh. Looks like Stripling up into that 3rd spot. could be a podium for this team. And mentioned that sponsor, Lupe Tortilla. Note from our drag racing expert, Amanda Busick, that they also sponsor 6-time Pro Stock champion Erica Enders in drag racing competition, who is the winningest female in all of motorsports, says Amanda.
Awesome.
Love it. And I wouldn't mind if they delivered to the booth at the next round of the championship either.
Uber Eats, maybe?
Let's make it happen. It would arrive pretty fast if Judson Holt and Denny Stripling were driving. That was proven here today.
Well, it's certainly been a fabulous day of racing. Really just dipping our toe in the water to see what the teams and the drivers think of this 3-hour Enduro. A lot of teams have been pushing for over the last few seasons. It's finally been given to them, and we'll see how that stacks up on the schedule as we move forward in 2025.
Into the final 11 minutes. We were talking drag racing. I think Amanda's ears perked up. How are you doing down in the pits, Amanda?
I have seen Sheila a couple times on pit lane here. So, yeah, I had to get that plug in for the 6-time Pro Stock World Champion, Erica Enders. I always like to point out that not only do men like race cars, women do too. We actually got to celebrate Samantha Tan last night at one of our events this weekend with the Road to World Challenge. So, and as we saw, women competing here in this 3-hour Enduro as well with Demi Chalkinson, along with Isabella Robusto. So, yeah, got to throw that in. Well done, Eric Enders.
Indeed. Seconded as Anderson goes side by side with Kai Van Berlo. We've got a lapped car to deal with here. That's Roman DeAngelis. Something is amiss with that car. It's not been on the pace for some time, but they continue to limp around, and despite that, still find themselves 5th in Pro-Am. Not sure how close Matt Bell is in the 19th place
he's
car.
A couple of laps back of those, so there had a few too many issues to be a factor here today, but great to see Matt Bell competing in our championship. There's a long history at this level of racing with GT4 machinery over the years, so great young talent. But yeah, I think for Roman DeAngelis and Gray Newell, I mean, it's really just one of those races which you have to endure and think of the big picture and picking up some valuable championship points.
It's been a minute or two since we checked in with Kenton Cook, but he does hold a commanding lead, 21.5 seconds over RS1's John Capestro Dubets. Parker Thompson continues to chip away, now 18.5 seconds back. This race progression graphic tells the story, doesn't it? Pretty early on, they moved to the front, and not much variation except during pit stop shuffles since that point.
Yes, BMWs have been super strong here, and but you still got to make it happen. This will be their first victory on the season, and should leapfrog them to the top of the standings at the end of the day. So it's a big, big weekend. Everyone knew it was going to be an important race on the calendar, just trying this 3-hour format, but also with double points awarded. You needed to get it right. You just didn't need a bad day. I mean, if you come in here and you think, oh, they swept the weekend, then there's really no difference. Double points. If you swept the weekend, you'd still get the max 50. But it's when you have a bad day on a double point day is when it really hurts you.
This driver lineup has plenty of experience in races much longer than this. Kenton Cook, of course, a class winner at the 24 Hours of Daytona, and he's had a number of starts and a lot of success in other endurance races. In fact, if you remember, back in October, he got drafted in last minute to run the Indy 8-hour and was one of the stars of the show that day. And for Kevin Boehm, while endurance racing at this level has not been something that he's been party to. There's Kevin on the right. He has done races like the 25 Hours of Thunderhill and other long-distance club-level races. So the notion of long stints was not something that they found terribly daunting. I just have to say the crew deserves a ton of credit. Their pit stops today were really smooth.
Really on it, really good stuff. They didn't spill the Kool-Aid, even though they're drinking some right now.
A few miles down the road from Waco. Gotta be careful with that one. Down to the final 7 minutes This is the leader in Pro-Am. We saw the emotion from James Walker Jr. in our mid-race interview. We chronicled it a couple of times, but had to miss his daughter's high school graduation tonight.
What a celebration it'll be, though, for the family.
Yes.
I'm sure he's so emotional talking about not being there, how proud he is of his daughter, but nonetheless, I mean, he loves his racing. It's so important to him, and obviously the family understands that. But if you'd come here and you'd had a disappointing day, you'd be thinking, oh, I wish I'd have just spent it at home. But with this victory, it'll be huge.
Don't get a lot of drivers to come on an interview and say, we're going to win this race with, what, at the time about 2 hours to go. But he did, and they are 6 minutes and change away from making that prediction into a reality. That's Charlie Postins and Colin Harma, who you referenced earlier, BMW engineer extraordinaire.
They're in a pretty stable position there. James holds down P2. Chris Wilson got around him earlier in the last hour of this race. But they've got a nice healthy gap. They're about, what, 5-6 seconds over Stripling and Walsh, so I think they're safe.
Looks that way. That's James. Looking a bit more poised and composed than when we saw him last.
Like
with
captain
Amanda.
of a ship.
Right?
Yeah,
there is a resemblance in that pose. Well, big day for Bimmer World. Looked like it could have been a double win with the two cars in different classes, but this Redline sponsored machine has firm control in the Pro-Am class and has for quite some time, it's worth noting. They really stormed to the front after the full course yellow and have not looked back since. And it'll be a second place, it appears, for the sister car, as mentioned, currently 6th overall, 2nd in the AM class. For Random Vandals, though, this could be a double win. What a day that would be. Not just a double win, but both cars in the top 5 overall.
Yeah, and for Paul Sparta, it's really a testimony to his investment and commitment to the program. There he is, watching on, watching his teammate Chris Wilson lead in AM, watching his young man who he supported, Kenton Cook, lead overall. So he's building this team. He wants to go to big places. You talked about their commitment to a GT3 program mid-season, Ryan. So that's where they want to be, and he's putting all of the right pieces in place and employs the right people. Some great drivers on the squad now as well.
That's right. If you missed it earlier, we were chatting about it. Kenton Cook and Connor Daly will be in a Fanatec GT entry later this season. Road America, Barber, and Indy, I believe, the scheduled races, and they'll be joined by Connor D. Filippi for the Indy 8-hour. That should be an awfully good lineup. That's probably the earliest, because they announced that before Sonoma, I think. It's probably the earliest we have ever had a full Indy 8-hour lineup announced.
Certainly looking forward to that this year.
Always.
Let's bring some top-line teams and drivers to our shores.
And a chance for the American teams to show what they're made of, going up against some of the best GT squads anywhere on the globe. 2 laps to go for Kenton Cook, 3 minutes 16 seconds. His lead at the last interval check, 25 seconds over John Capestra Dubets.
Okay, so Kai Van Berlo has just gotten around James Clay for an overall position, but what that now does, it allows Denny Stripling and Chris Walsh clear road ahead of them to try and chase down James Clay for P2 in the AM class. So James has just got to keep his head down. I think the gap is around about 4 seconds or so, so he should be good, but got to keep pushing.
There is Clay, and we'll see if we can find or if we can see the yellow BMW that's chasing. There it is. That is Denny Stripling.
Certainly bright enough, and know he's coming.
Yes. Now, Toby Grohovic runs a great team. This is the same team that for many years campaigned under the name of Classic BMW. Gone through a little bit of a reshuffle in how the team is structured over the last couple of seasons, but about as strong of a BMW operation, as you can see. And Denny Stripling just set that car's fastest lap of the race this deep into it. He's chasing James Clay all right.
He is, and with that delta, that was a 2.3 second gain on James Clay, and he sits 3.2 back right now. So with 2 laps to go, he does have enough pace. James Clay has got to get the hammer down. Otherwise, that position is very vulnerable here on the final lap.
The headlights starting to come on as the sun starts to sink down below the horizon. Here's the gap over the last 3 laps. Stripling gaining at minimum 1.5 seconds each of the last 3, and he can see that car getting closer in the windscreen. That's pretty much all the motivation you need, and they might have some traffic to deal with too before it's all said and done.
Yeah, he is absolutely feeling it right now. Track conditions are cooling down, and the race track is coming to him.
White flag for the overall leader, Kenton Cook. Just 3.5 miles away from a win here in the Lonestar Enduro. The Random Vandals team anxiously watching on as this car leads overall, and their sister car leads in class, 5th overall. Up the hill for the last time, no pressure whatsoever, as John Capestre-Dubets has yet to take the white flag, giving you some idea the scope of that lead for Kenton Cook. Now he does, 27 seconds the gap first to second. This is the leader in Pro-Am, Tyler McQuarrie. He also under no particular pressure at this time. His closest pursuer is back in 7th overall. So the fight really might be for 2nd and 3rd in M with the pace of Denny Stripling as the leaders come through to take the white flag. And here is Stripling closing in. That gap has really shrunk. That's it right there. Clay back to Stripling with 1 lap to go here at Circuit of the Americas.
This is going to get tight. I tell you what, by the time they get to turn 11 into that brake zone, these 2 BMWs could be really, really close.
Yeah. Don't need to deal with any more traffic. That's already been left behind. Final lap here at COTA. Kai Van Berlo not in the same class. Clay and Stripling, however, are 2nd and 3rd in the M category here in the final lap at COTA.
2.2 seconds faster on that lap alone. Denny Stripling is absolutely chasing down that P2 position. He wants it in a big, big way.
Stripling not thinking points. They're not running the full season. James Clay and Charlie Postins absolutely are thinking about points here on this final lap, and it is a bit of a drop-off. 3 points, 18 to 15 from 2nd to 3rd. We'll keep our eyes on that, but in the meantime, Kenton Cook, utter domination since the restart. It was close. Remember, they used that overcut strategy to take the lead ahead of RS1, but the execution has been picture perfect for Random Vandals Racing. The Lonestar Enduro goes to Kenton Cook and Kevin Boehm. Random Vandals will celebrate at least 1 class win and possibly another as we wait for Chris Wilson, the leader in the AM class, about 30 seconds from now.
Fantastic performance, beautiful drive.
2 class leaders effectively nose to tail here. The first of the 2 BMWs, the red one, that's Tyler McQuarrie, leading in Pro-Am. He and James Walker Jr. on the verge of something very, very special. And Chris Wilson in tow. He's the leader in the AM class in the 2nd Random Vandals machine. At the last interval, Stripling's deficit to Clay was less than 0.7 of a second. We'll follow that in a moment, but for now, let's celebrate a class victory for Bimmerworld, another class victory for Random Vandals. Tyler McQuarrie and Chris Wilson cross the line, securing class wins in Pro-Am and AM, respectively.
BMWs dominate COTA.
And I think Stripling may have made the pass. I do not see James Clay. Oh no, Clay is in the barriers. Oh, that is massive for their championship.
Where's Chris Walsh? He may grab that final podium spot here.
On the road, Stripling takes 2nd. Walsh comes through to finish in 3rd. And I think we've got to look at what happened. Could it be contact on the final lap? It was a hip check.
Wow, that's through the triple apexer, isn't it?
Sure is. Stripling made it through. Kai Van Berlo appears to have been off the pace on the final lap, but still was able to limp home and secure second in the Pro-Am class. But this is a look at the contact one more time. Almost a save. It was so close, but Clay couldn't hang on, and that will cost them dearly. He still has not crossed the line, Cal.
Oh,
now he has.
That was pretty aggressive there by Denny. I'm not sure the stewards are going to like that one, but we'll let them make the call. But such a shame for this season, just cannot get going for Charlie Postnes and James Clay. Two-time champs, look for 3 in a row and just can't get the season going.
Wow. Final lap fireworks at Circuit of the Americas, but well behind this car. Kenton Cook and Kevin Boehm take their first win of the season, and it might as well be 2 double points here. This is huge for them with the championship in mind. John Cabestre-Dubats and Eric Filgaris a strong second, albeit some 29 seconds behind the overall leader, Parker Thompson. And Dan Henley, you kind of got to wonder what might have been for them if it weren't for the timing of the full course yellow.
I think maybe P2. I'm not sure the win was on the cards, but I think they certainly lost the position with that pit stop exchange and the timing of the full course yellow.
These are the provisional race results. That incident, by the way, has been adjudicated, and there is a time equivalent drive-through penalty that has just been handed to Fast Track Racing and Denny Stripling for that contact with James Clay. That's going to drop them well down the order, and just don't know if that's going to be enough to help promote Clay or not. That becomes the question. It certainly puts Rotec Racing on the podium, however, with Jaden Lander and Rob Holland. At any rate, we'll sort that all out. As mentioned, Wilson and Sparta, they get the win for Random Vandals Racing. Double win for that team. Very, very cool. Auto Technics, Colin Garrett and Zach Anderson overcoming an issue early in the race to finish 4th in silver and 6th overall. They needed another yellow late at that race to get them back into the mix. There you see Van Berlo and Swearingen. Pretty strong run for that team. Van Berlo had really good pace late, running down Ryan Eversley and ultimately making that pass, but still Eversley and Lamara finishing in the 3rd spot in class. And as we look at the AM class results, keep in mind that penalty has not been factored into the results screen you're looking at here. Stripling and Holt will drop well down the order after being given a time equivalent penalty for a drive-through after making contact with James Clay on the final lap of the race. Looking around for some other results of note. Tough day for the Nissan bunch. They had great pace in qualifying, but a variety of mechanical woes waylaid pretty much the entire Nissan quartet.
Yeah, severe heat, and it was always going to be a test for a relatively new car to get through this 3-hour enduro, and certainly they succumbed to various issues. I think the power steering was the main consideration. They just felt that the cars weren't safe to drive with that going on.
Cars making their way down the pit lane and towards victory lane and the podium, where Amanda is, of course, waiting for them. Imagine the Random Vandals celebration party tonight's going to be a good one. Keep in mind, no race tomorrow. This is a one-race weekend for Pirelli GT4 America, and they've got a double win to celebrate. Yeah,
that's going to be huge, and that's one thing about these double-header weekends. You just kind of dust yourself off, get reset for tomorrow, but that doesn't have to happen for this championship round. So big celebrations, and deservedly so, and there's a nice little gap now in the schedule to really come off on a high and get ready for VIR in a couple of months' time.
Beautiful views here at Circuit of the Americas. The Lone Star flag waving proudly above this circuit. The city of Austin, just 11 miles away. If you're going to celebrate a double win, there are a lot worse places to do it than Austin, Texas.
Yeah, it's a fun town. Great eating establishments. They like to party here. As they say, Austin, keep it weird, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, this is one interview I'm looking forward to. If Tyler McQuarrie and James Walker, James in particular, was emotional earlier, what are they going to be like after a race win? There's the celebratory fist pump from Tyler McQuarrie, who brought the car home.
Start the year with a win, and then had a rough weekend in Sebring, but nice bounce back here.
That's right. Getting those gloves off, and we'll be joined by the team, I'm sure, before too much longer. And into Park for May comes the Random Vandals machine of Bohm and Cook. There we can see Amanda in the background getting ready to jump in for some interviews. And I think Amanda is standing by. Let's hear from some of our victorious drivers in the Lonestar Enduro, Amanda.
Well, you probably just heard Chris Wilson come in behind us. Very exciting. BMW's down here as we kick off celebration in front of the podium. And as Kenton gets his helmet off, I'll go ahead and start with you, Kevin. You kicked off this effort, and this Lonestar Enduro turned out to be quite an adventure. I know for you alone, just with everything that you guys had to adapt to. You started down, I think, P4 in class in silver. What was the difference maker today?
I mean, it really, we had to make up for missing some track time yesterday, so we approached qualifying a little bit different, and we really used it as a test session for how to make the car good for the race, and it was pretty good, and we made a couple of really small adjustments, and the car was just really good in the race. It was really raceable, and we just was good on tires, and I think that was the difference, to be able to kind of put the car in the right place on track to get some positions and try to keep the nose clean and just minimize anything that could go wrong, and it's amazing.
First win of the season equals double points for this effort. And Ken, I talked a little strategy with you before as we got the race going. What went your way today?
Everything. We had the best car, we have the best team, we have the best co-driver, best strategy. Yeah, we had a lot of good things going for us today, and the team executed. Obviously, Paul and Chris won as well, and it's a good day for BMW. It's a good day for Random Vandals, and man, it's yeah, it feels good. So. Their car was absolutely hooked up today, so I could almost do nothing wrong. So I really tried, trust me. But very thankful to be a part of this team with Kevin and all the partners we have together.
Congratulations to our silver class winners, and our overall winner goes to Random Vandals. We'll have another Random Vandals coming up as well, but meanwhile, I'm going to pop over to Bimmer World for our Pro-Am champions. And you know I'm going to come right to you after that last interview, but on such a special day, you called your shot.
I sort of had to. I had no choice. I wasn't allowed to come home tonight if we didn't run this race for my daughter on her graduation day. So I am just so thankful that I'm surrounded by friends, family, and teammates that allow me to do this. They understand it gets in the way sometimes of other things in life. But can I pivot to Tyler McQuarrie for a second, who just freaking drove the wheels off this race car during his stints and just knew what he had to do, rocked it, just freaking rocked it. I'm thrilled to be a part of this entire effort. These guys back here, I mean, this was just I'm done talking.
Well, one more, though. Girl.
I love you, darling. I love you to the moon and back, and you know that. And you made me cry again. You made me cry again. I'll see you tomorrow for the graduation party. I promise I won't be late. We got a fast car.
Tyler, I believe when I looked back to the starting grid, I believe you guys were on the 11th row, pretty far down there, but just to battle up through class, battle up through other cars around you. What made the BMW so successful here?
You know, the Bimmer World guys have been working so hard the last couple of days, and this car was so good on long race runs. You know, we knew it was going to be a lot of work starting from the back, but it's such a long race. You can recover from a lot of stuff, and we actually, you know, made another mistake in the middle, and we recovered again. You know, so it's just, you got to put your head down, keep on going, and the car was awesome, and this guy drove a great stint, and I can't believe we came back from back of the field like twice. Like, it was amazing. This thing is a rocket.
Congratulations. You know, guys, I think there's some sort of like graduation wisdom that could come in winning a race when challenges present themselves. Hopefully that'll get passed on to James's daughter. But as we finish up, before podium celebrations come, we have one more special interview, and that is going to be a double win, double points day for Random Vandals Racing. And Paul, I'm going to come to you first. What does it say about you as a driver, as a team owner in this entire organization?
Well, as a driver, I mean, it was just tough out there. It was hot. We had some issues with power steering. It was difficult, and we just ground it out. You know, we had one little minor mistake as a team in the pit stop, and we overcame that, and then we got out, and, you know, the car was awesome. And as a team, I couldn't be more proud of this team. It's just, we've worked so hard to be in this position. We always said, this is what we wanted to do. And today is like the best racing day of our lives. It is absolutely fantastic. And double points, double win. I mean, what's not to like?
Chris, I heard you as you made your way to a podium. You wanted your presence known, but you guys come off of the win in Sebring as well. Why is this effort gelling so well?
Yeah, I mean, I just love being with this team, like I told you last weekend, and the Random Vandals are just awesome. Raccoons all the way. But I just have to say something about SRO. I mean, I love you, but 8 o'clock for an 87-year-old, this is past my bedtime. I don't know about this.
Hey, I see on the side of the trailer it says there's no trash can not. There's only trash can.
That's right. It's only trash cans.
Yeah.
Congratulations to the entire Random Vandals effort, to Bimmer World, and to everyone that participated in this Lonestar Enduro. What a night, guys.
Yeah, what a night. I think it's really going to be bedtime for Chris Wilson, I
Cat's
suspect.
out of the bag in terms of his age, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there was a well-kept secret until just a moment ago. I think he'll stay up a little bit later and enjoy the celebration here this evening. Well, it was an action-packed 3 hours. Let's look at how it played out. The Lonestar Enduro. It was, an all-Nissan front row 3 hours ago as they headed into turn number 1. Battles between a couple of BMW teams here in the early stages. Random Vandals, Auto Technic, a cleaner run on the day for Random Vandals ultimately paid off, but yeah, that was a fun moment there. Kevin Bowman, Colin Garrett with a little nose-to-tail contact. RS1 pretty strong on the day. Really the lone interloper at the end amongst all the BMWs with that Porsche Cayman. Oh, big moment here. James Clay very nearly had his race in very early in the going. Ultimately didn't quite get the result they were looking for. And a couple other cars in the wars here with JMF Motorsports and OGH Racing coming together in the early stages. Pit stops crucial, of course. As we saw, it was an overcut strategy for Random Vandals that put them out in front. Further back in the pack, this was the battle for the lead in AM. Chris Wilson, he's not shy about coming forward, is he? He's able to put his nose to the inside of James Clay. That was for the lead and ultimately the win in class. Final lap of the race, Denny Stripling into James Clay. The race ended against the guardrail here for the two-time defending AM class champions. Ultimately finished 5th in class when it could have been so much more. Race wins to a number of teams, including Random Vandals Racing. Kenton Cook teamed up with Kevin Bohm. They pick up the win in the silver class. They also got the win in the AM class. Chris Wilson and Paul Sparta. That's the second car coming through in this shot. And Bimmer World's Tyler McQuarrie and James Walker Jr. secure the hard-earned victory here today at Circuit of the Americas. It's a 4th place overall, but winners in their class. Sun setting on the horizon here at Circuit of the Americas. Podium celebrations about to get underway. Boy, oh boy, first time we've seen an endurance race in this championship, Calvin. What do you think? Will it be the last?
No, I don't think so. I think it was enjoyable. Certainly worked out well. I think the teams learned a lot in terms of the pit stops, in terms of execution of the pit stops. Certainly there's some strategy there when we saw some cars stranded on the racetrack. You saw teams take advantage of that to get to pit lane. Others didn't. Backfired on a couple of the squads because of that decision there. But some great racing. But at the end of the day, the BMWs were just too strong here. In the heat of Texas here, they just had really dominant race cars and they put them to good use.
We said at the outset this was going to be an endurance race, a test of driver, a test of team, and a test of machinery. I think we saw all three of those things play out at one point or another.
Yeah, we did. They were long, hard stints for these drivers here today. Double stints for everyone as part of the program. I like the way they laid out. They kept it pretty regimented with the protocol and the strategy that teams could employ. But nonetheless, I mean, the cars, I mean, the heat, we saw the Nissan struggle. They've had great pace to start this season, but that was a big endurance run for them. They've learned a lot. They'll come back a bit stronger in the next rounds, I feel.
Podium celebrations underway. These are the Pro-Am drivers taking their spots on the rostrum. On the left-hand side, Ryan Eversley, Mike Lamar celebrating a hard-earned third place today. On the right, Kurt Swearingen. On the far right, Kai Van Berlo next to him. And front and center, the Bimmer World pairing of McQuarrie and Walker with the biggest smiles of all and holding up #1 as well as #1 trophies for a victory that, look, they said it a couple of times, they had to come from the back to the front. This was not like a race that they spent the whole race controlling. This was one they had to fight for.
Yeah, they were one of the teams who didn't hit pit lane and suddenly had to drive back through the field, but they had the pace to do it. A pretty dominant car in their class here today. Macquarie's a great teammate for James Walker Jr. I think they've really taken it to a whole new level since they've been together. Finished runner-up in the championship last year. They look to go one better in 2024.
A vigorous champagne spray with no race to look forward to tomorrow. A few of them might actually consume a little bit of the champagne too. Ryan Eversley did. And that'll be a fun celebration later on tonight. How about the venue for the endurance race? To do it here at Circuit of the Americas, a racetrack that presents just about every challenge a racetrack can at one point or another.
It does. It's got a little bit of everything, some big heavy brake zones, some straightaways, some high speed, medium speed, and some really important low speed corners as well. But it gives you plenty of racing room, and I just think there's a different attitude within the championship this year that allows these cars to go side by side and not run into each other. So we saw minimal incidents this year, and I think it's really a great future for the championship. If you're going to do an enduro, I think here is a great place to do it again next year if it is on the calendar. I think what the series will do, they'll come away from this race, they'll get feedback from all the entrants and see what they felt about it, and maybe we'll see one, maybe more on the calendar for 2025.
Looking ahead, it's a bit of a break for Pirelli GT4 America as a lot of the SRO championships globally pause to help and facilitate more international participation in the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa. But coming out of that break will be a trip to VIR. In a lot of ways, a similar track with the elevation change, the high-speed nature of it, but with one major difference. Unlike here, there is basically no runoff, no room for error at VIR.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. It's an old-school racetrack. I love it. I mean, I just love the layout. I think the high-speed S's there are just phenomenal. But yeah, the consequences there are a little bit higher if you do run off the road, but they've done a great job. Nonetheless, everyone there at VIR has done a great job in making that track super safe now, so it's going to be an enjoyable weekend.
Welcoming the AM Class podium to the stage now. And as you can see, first, the Rotec Racing duo. They got there in part because of the penalty to Denny Stripling and the contact to James Clay. That helped to elevate Rob Holland and Jaden Lander. But I believe this is another one of those teams that didn't quite get the full course yellow to play in their favor. They were running towards the front of the class early in the race and had to come back. So pretty nice job to get to the third spot. Then on the right-hand side of the screen, Chris Walsh and Nick Shanny. I wonder if we'll see more of Chris Walsh in this car moving forward. Terry Borcheller's done a tremendous job with Nick over the past few seasons, but this is a really nice finish for them. And front and center, Chris Wilson on the left, Paul Sparta on the right, celebrating a hard-earned victory here today.
Well, Shanny drove tremendous today. He had a great stint, really good racing, and got his elbows out when it was needed and had a really strong race.
Yeah, look at the smile on Chris Wilson's face. 87 years old, or whatever he claimed to be a few moments ago, but his enthusiasm has not dimmed.
Even I wouldn't give him that label. I'd like to give him a hard time.
Oh boy, there's the celebration for the AM Class podium here today at Circuit of the Americas, which leaves just the silver class, and we'll soon see those drivers taking to the stage for their recognition. There's the Rotec team celebrating a hard-earned podium today. Again, a shout out to Carl Thompson, who was called in to help manage the team for the pit stops as Rotec branched out into long-distance racing here in the States for the first time, at least in recent memory. Let's look at the results in the silver class here with Kevin Boehm and Kenton Cook taking the victory by nearly 30 seconds. But it wasn't necessarily going to be that straightforward. Ultimately, the pit stop execution, the strategy call to go with the overcut, that's what put them in command. And then Kenton Cook had to hold off a hard-charging John Capestra-Dubets, who had warm tires when Cook came out on the cold stickers.
Yeah, he did everything he could to wrestle the lead away, but it was kind of futile because the BMWs were just too strong, I think, for the Hanley Motorsports team. That pit stop where they elected to stay out and just missed it with the safety car coming out, I think that cost them P2. I think they had a little bit more pace than the RS1 Porsche. In race conditions, I think the heat of the day really took the edge off that Porsche.
It did appear that way. That Porsche did seem a little bit stronger towards the evening hours, but ultimately they just didn't have the answer for the Random Vandals BMW. And I'm with you. I really wish we could have seen what might have been for these two gentlemen up on the screen there. Parker Thompson on the left, Dan Hanley on the right. They had pace. They were running at the front. Looked like they could be a threat for more than just third in that silver class, but ultimately the yellow just did not fall in their favor. And yeah, you can tell Parker Thompson not thrilled. This is not the result he was looking for. Not as happy, certainly, as he was in our track preview when he had you sitting next to him, Cal.
Yeah, well, I had a big smile too. It's great to be in the car when Parker's wheeling it around these circuits. So it's been a good add to our shows, and hopefully we'll continue it moving forward.
To see the respect shown there by Phil Garris and JCD to Kenton Cook and Kevin Boehm. The four of them raced each other a lot last year. Of course, well, I guess that's not true. Phil Garris wouldn't have been part of that mix. He would have been up in Fanatec GT, but certainly John Capestra-Dubets was part of a lot of battles with the Random Vandals team at various times. I think JCD and Eric, they know second place was probably the most they could have hoped for with the pace of the BMW here, especially in the latter stages today. And that's why you see the smiles so broad on their faces. They know second place with double points. Well, they've got a chance still to fight for the title as the season approaches the halfway mark. As the Pirelli hats go back on, the champagne starts to spray. And that is it for the Lonestar Enduro here at Circuit of the Americas. For Amanda, Cal, and our entire team, I'm Ryan. So long from Austin, Texas. Thanks for joining us.